mic to be open or not.
Would you prefer it off?
No, I just wanted to kind of forewarn you that whatever you're chuckling about, don't start reading it out loud.
That's really good. I'm gonna mute it.
Okay.
All right, good choice. Oh, boy. Super Bowl's catching up with me.
That was a good game, huh?
It was a great game.
Yeah.
And that was a hole, by the way.
That's what.
You didn't watch the end of the game?
I watched all the way to the end.
Oh. You saw the hole call?
Could have gone either way.
Which hole?
There was a
On
hole.
the shirt?
Yeah, there was a hole.
Then it wasn't a hole. I've seen a lot worse holes, not.
Oh, so have I, but
Yeah.
I don't think it affected the total.
I wouldn't think it did.
Chris Stapleton could sing the alphabet, and I like it.
What's that?
He could sing the alphabet, and I like it.
Staple? What do you think of Rihanna?
I came in from letting the dogs out, and I look at the TV and she's grabbing her crotch.
Oh,
I
yeah.
said, oh yeah, this is good.
And
I
she's,
really want to
and
watch
she's
it.
pregnant.
It was on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
channel.
I think she just had a child.
I don't know.
Is she pregnant?
Yeah, that was a big reveal last night.
How about the commercials were kind of like,
I tell you who I did like, was the woman in the beginning that sang, she had that red dress on, very booming.
lift her voice or something?
Yeah, ooh.
All right.
She was unbelievable.
I've got 6:30. This is the Newport Board of Selectmen meeting. What is today? February 13th, 2023, and this is a budget review hearing. All right, Paul, first up, or Hunter?
Just one note, Mr. Chairman, late this afternoon, sometime this afternoon, we detected an omission in the budget that is in this department that we'll elaborate on. Basically, in short, the calculations of data omit the value of the costs of one position, which we can elaborate on.
Which department?
Public Works.
Okay.
So we'll get to it tonight.
All right.
But I would suggest to you that between now and the time you reach the end of your budget, I will find the difference and return it back to its original
Okay.
state.
All right, why don't we start with the library? Tonight, they seem to,
Page 25.
yeah. All right. Okay, who's here for the library tonight?
I'm here, Justine Fafara, the library director, and a number of my board members are with me as well.
All right, do you have a separate handout for us or something, breaking down your budget or such? or-
I don't think what I have looks any different than what you have, but I'm happy
Okay.
to.
I think we just have a
Oh,
one-line
you
entry.
don't have it at all,
Nope.
perfect.
Oh, just, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, one line.
We have a copier, we can make more. We can run it, make copies. Hunter can run copies.
I think we just need two more.
Thank you.
Probably some for the public too. While, Justine, while we're waiting, you want to introduce your board members who are here to, back up your-
Absolutely. Would you like me to introduce you, or would you all like to introduce yourselves?
I'll introduce myself. I'm Sharon Urban, the trustee elected by the town.
I'm Nancy Wilmot. I'm the treasurer and trustee.
Bill Wilmot.
hi, Bill.
Marty Lovely. Barbara Kwiatkowski, trustee.
Right.
Toby Menard.
Trustee. Are there any trustees missing? How big is your board?
We have 9 trustees, so there are a few who are not here tonight.
Okay. Thank you much.
You have one?
Okay,
Anybody else need one? Oh, that's right.
all right. So Justine, you want to,
So we asked for a 2% increase to our town appropriation,
yeah.
which is a little more than $7,000 of an increase. And the town money covers mostly people, mostly payroll and staff development. And then also a little bit of our materials budget, and then some things like accounting and the audit and insurance, and all of our utilities as well.
Okay. Can you give us an update as to how the library's been doing coming out of pandemic?
Yeah, our numbers are up. We are almost at pre-pandemic levels of people through the door and books out the door. We are in the process of painting the interior first floor of the old mansion. It's going very well. We got a big grant last year that helped us create a board game collection and increase our video game collection. So we've been able to do a lot more after-school programming that the teens are interested in. So we have anywhere from 10 to 30 teens every day after school. With some donation money last year and then grant money this year, we've hired a teen librarian to run those programs for us and make sure the teens are engaged and staying out of trouble after school. But yeah, things are busy and going really well, and the community's been very invested. The Art Center is also busy and doing great things. They have an exhibit up right now. So yeah, things are good.
Okay. Anyone have a question on the library? Sorry.
I'm looking here, just for my own understanding, better understanding. Can you list the people that are receiving salaries from library?
Absolutely. So myself, my assistant director, our youth services librarian, and that the three of us are full-time. And then we have an outreach coordinator who's part-time, and 2 high school pages, 2 high schoolers.
They're paid?
Yep, they are paid.
Good.
And 3 circulation front desk assistants. Those are all paid through town dollars. And then our teen librarian is currently being paid through grants.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Barry, anything else?
No, I'm all set.
Keith?
No, I'm all set.
Jim?
Good.
Herb?
Don't see anything right now.
Okay. The grant paying your teen librarian, how long is that grant for?
Guaranteed through the end of this year, and then we'll see what next year looks like. And yes, thank you, Sharon. We eliminated our local historian position.
Yep.
Because A, we weren't able to fill it, and B, we needed to make some cuts to make our budget work this year with the, you all know, the increase
Yep.
in oil and electricity and all those fun things.
Okay. Hunter, is the library's electricity under the solar contract with us or not? Or Paul, we know?
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah.
We got a discount last year.
Yeah, they were aggregated into the group.
Okay, so
Good.
you're seeing the same massive increases the town is of like 2% or something?
Yeah.
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 I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that program is paying off in spades
Mhm.
at the
Yes.
moment. It turned out to be quite beneficial.
Yes, it has. All right, let's see.
So we have this budget, and then I don't know when you want to talk about it. We also have a warrant article to put forward
Okay, let's do that now.
for the roof of the building. We have a few pretty massive leaks. There are 3 in the library and 1 in the Library Art Center. So the warrant article reads, to see if the town will raise and appropriate $189,400 to be transferred to the Richards Free Library to complete funding for the roofing project. The balance of the project, $26,600, will be paid for by the library with funds from our building maintenance account and a grant.
Okay,
So we have a $5,000 grant to put towards the roof, and then the library is going to put $21,600 towards the project. So we're asking the town to raise the balance, which is $189,400.
Okay, we haven't gotten to warrant articles yet, but is this a warrant article that we would support, or would we want them to go out on a petition article for it? Because if they're gonna do a petition article, they should get started.
Is this a complete roof replacement, or is this just a patch repair, such as was done like last year?
It is not a patch repair like we've been doing for a number of years. It is replacing most of the copper work, replacing some of the asbestos tile that's on the roof with slate, fixing the slate, fixing some of the rubber. So this should last us a lot longer than the patches we've been doing.
Is it the asbestos tile that's leaking now?
It is not.
What is leaking?
So there are some joints is the wrong word, where materials meet, and those are causing some issues. And then there were some, there's tar that was used in places tar was not supposed to be used. So some of the roofing materials are coming up.
Oops, sorry.
So there are some leaks in those spots as well.
Is some of this the result of quite a few years ago now, getting down when the air conditioning units were put on the roof?
I
Could that
don't
have-
think it's a result of that because the leaks aren't in that section of the roof.
Okay,
Yeah. I would be very sorry.
all right. Any other questions on their proposed warrant article? Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. We have dealt, I've been a trustee a long time, many of you know that, and we have dealt with this many times, as Mr. Teller says. We, this time, have a different roofing company that came with a drone and inspected thoroughly and identified like 30 points of weakness. And so we've checked their references. The town of Chester speaks to them coming in to their 1912 building and solving leak problems that had been persistent for decades. And there being no further leaking since this company came and did their work. And we've reviewed it quite thoroughly and feel as though the time has come to not put on a Band-Aid, but to try to do comprehensive repair so that perhaps this roof will last the 25 to 30 years that you would hope a roof would last.
All right.
You used a word that kind of caused my ear to pick up, that's weakness. Are you talking weakness in terms of leakage, or are you talking weakness in
Not
terms of the
structural
structural?
weakness. Not structural weakness
Okay.
at all.
And they
but
checked that to make sure
fragility,
there's no, yeah.
fragility where, and you know, they said in our report, incompatible materials
Okay.
put side by side. Places where slate needs to be repaired. They talked about repairing some millwork that was in bad shape. So we feel that this is, number one, the best analysis we've had in many years.
Okay, good.
And number two, our best hope of really being able to solve what has become a problem popping up here, there, and everywhere through the years. And it is not something that we can do while this town is blessed to have a good maintenance fund. It is not something that can do this extensive work at one time, get it done, and you can all imagine that a library and an arts center do not need leaking water.
Right. Thank you.
Any other
Or
library?
mold.
This roofing company, do they have a verifiable experience with slate roofs?
Yes, they are copper and slate specialists.
Yeah, and so that's part of the issue is because we're a historic building on the historic
Yeah.
registry, we have to keep these more expensive roofing materials.
Never mind the HVAC sitting on top of it.
So, are you you keep saying repairs, and are we talking a complete roof replacement?
No,
No.
Well, that'd be even more expensive.
Well, a couple $100,000.
Yes, young man in the back, state your name, please.
Bill Wilmot, trustee. Couple things. A, as you all know, the Richards Free Library is one of the jewels of our community. It's amazing. The facility is fantastic. The stuff that they do there is just overwhelming. Justine does a great job. The trustees have taken well, we had a great long meeting the other day to discuss the quotes and, which direction we want to go. Do we want to continue to use the Band-Aid process, which we've been doing, or did we want to do it right? And I think the consensus of the board was, this is crazy, let's do it right. And that's how we ended up with the warrant article suggestion. The library has a number of endowments. They have funds for maintenance, they have funds for books, they have funds for programs, but we just don't have enough money to fix the roof properly, and that's the problem. And because it is such a jewel, in its current situation, we're going to continue to get damage. Ceilings have had to be replaced several times. Damage to some of the things in the building, like in the Art Center. And it's time. It's time. It's important to get this thing done.
Right. Do you have like a ballpark estimate as to what you've been spending annually to Band-Aid it? More or less. Bringing someone in, fixing this leak, having to repair this ceiling section because it's leaking. By doing the proper repair, you're going to eliminate the need to continue to invest in fixing leaks and stuff inside and patching year after year, correct?
I hope so.
So, ideally, there would be some return by doing it all at once. You won't be having the continual.
So we've been spending somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 a year on roof and related issues.
Which doesn't work.
Right.
I joked many times when I became a member, a trustee of the Richards Free Library, I thought I was going to talk about books. And Andrea, the predecessor, she joked and said, we don't generally talk about books here, Bill, because we have too much other things to talk about. And basically what we talk about is roofs. Roofs and mildew and stuff like that. So I'd love to be able to talk about books.
So if the roof gets fixed, you can talk about books.
We hope so. That's my goal.
Okay. Any other trustee wanting to comment on this? Anyone on the board have a comment? Any preference as to posting it as one of our articles or asking them to do a petition?
It's not currently in our list of warrant articles.
No.
Nope.
But you can put it on.
Yes, it's up to us.
And to me, I would like to see us put it on.
Which speaks to our support for it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to support this initiative, and as everybody has mentioned, it's one of the jewels of the town, and as board members, I think we should go on record to support it.
You want to make that motion?
Sure. I would make a motion that we include this library warrant article on our list of warrants.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the board? In the public? Mr. Spalding, you had a hand up.
This is going to be 1 year cost, no bonding on it.
Yes. But the way I heard it, that's what it was.
It's going to be voted on regardless.
Right. It'd probably, Paul, am I right in assuming if it passes, it'd be about 13 cents on the tax rate?
No, I think probably more like 25.
How much was it for?
189.
189.
189, okay.
Almost
Okay, I was
30
thinking
almost 30
139,
cents.
but yeah, okay. Okay. Still, it's better than in patching year after year.
Yep.
And then-
Yeah, I think it's about time to do it right.
Yep. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding this article to our warrant, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining? Okay,
Thank you.
all right, now before you leave, do you
Yeah.
want to comment briefly on the Library Arts Center? Because I think they have a line here too.
They should, yep. So the town always supports the Library Arts Center a little bit every year. They do an incredible job of finding grants to keep their programs running and getting support from other places. But I know they really appreciate the town support as well. And they do great things for people all over, and not only in Newport, but certainly lots of people in Newport. It's just a great, a special resource. If the library is a jewel, the art center sure is too.
Yeah, I've always felt that between the rec center and the library and library arts center, that's where people interact with the town.
Yeah,
So. And you had one other trustee sneak in?
we did, yes. This is Vicki Bridge, one of our
All right.
trustees.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else? Nancy's saying no.
No.
She wants to get out before we change. Okay, thank you for coming.
Yep. Do we know, when will we know if you approve our 2% increase to the?
Well, it's in the budget that was presented to us from the town manager, correct?
Right,
Yes?
Is it the
Yes.
2%?
So it's,
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah,
good.
it's,
It's there for now.
yes.
Wonderful. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
Don't leave, there's much more meeting to be
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Now,
Last
this,
year was a long meeting.
all right, Bill,
Well, I will go
hopefully,
last next time.
Bill, hopefully you can talk about books.
I want to talk about books.
No, next year they go last.
Yeah.
All right. Paul, who's up next?
I don't know if Todd had any particular order he wanted to go in, or?
Okay. Todd?
No, we can do highway. Highway or Arnold.
Highway, page 19. Is that correct, Paul?
That is correct.
Yeah, this budget is down.
What's that?
But this is the place that I fired somebody and I wasn't supposed to.
What's that?
Oh,
This-
okay.
This is the area that I
Got it.
fired somebody and I wasn't supposed to.
So
So,
there's the omission, I believe, of one truck driver. Correct.
so you're saying this is the department where you're down like one person?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be reflected in the salary line.
Correct.
And-
Correct. That's how
and
it
pension
is.
and
And
other
we'll,
things.
we'll calculate that number for you, and we'll have it at the next meeting, but I'm hoping at your next meeting I'll have further cuts that we would suggest to bring it back
Okay.
down to the level I originally recommended to.
You know, once again, we see, you know, you're using a 5-year average on fuel. And I think several people on this board feel that it's basically under budgeting what the actual will be. So,
Put the words out of my mouth.
so. Craig, anything you want to say on highway? Everything good? All your equipment's running like brand new?
No. It's running, but it's not running like,
No. All right. We'll get to
You're running new, so that's good.
new and improved, newer.
Newer, okay, good.
Few replacement parts. Much like some of our equipment.
All right. So anything you want to comment on about highway and such, any, you know, thoughts about how things were last year, how you hope this budget makes it better next year, or change the way we do things, or?
Well, this is my second go-around with the budget process, so I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Todd might be able to speak a little bit better to that, but
I think one of the scary things is the overall increase that we see in pricing on materials, parts, and then availability as well for some of that stuff.
Right, but we're not the only ones seeing it, right? Everybody's
Correct,
seeing it.
correct.
Anyone on the board, any questions for Highway?
Can you live with that mowing budget?
What's the number on that? Because I don't recall, I'm sorry. I don't
You asked for
have-
9,000, it's down to 75, and you've already spent 8,430.
That's correct, and if we have them for the same time frame that we historically had them, 2-week time frame,
You'd be okay.
that number is going to be approximately the same this year.
Okay.
That's in the current year's budget.
Okay.
Spent already. We did ask for a small increase on that, didn't we, Todd?
Yeah, try to get a little more time.
Now drainage. Basically as, well, you got 7,300 for this year, and you've spent over 17,000. That basically the side of the road drainage work and stuff?
Culverts.
Culverts. Now, is that something that's gonna repeat itself, or was this just a season of?
As we do more drainage work, yes.
Well, we do drainage work every year.
Right.
We do as much or as little as funding will allow.
Right, but was this, spending $10,000 more, was this because it was necessary to do it?
Some of that money was from the flooding events, because we did additional,
Yeah, okay.
and we had to replace some of that.
Okay, so it was based,
Or install culvert like that we had on hand, to make sure, we had another flooding event, or,
right,
and then there was a couple of the 4-foot culverts that we, or 4-foot culverts that we replaced on East Mountain Road, that was $3,900, I believe, so
Just
that's
for the pipe.
okay.
about a fifth of that,
So-
17.
So that was weather related, and ideally the new culvert should be able to handle a similar storm?
We should be able to. There'll probably be an occasion where there would be some expenditures for different sizes.
Right.
Typically, we try to upsize when we can.
Yeah. Now, any of the storm damage covered by any emergency declarations or anything?
FEMA.
It is.
Yeah.
So for this extra expense we are having this year for drainage, we're getting some
We do some
reimbursement back?
We do some reimbursement, but boy, I'll tell you, it's a process to get it.
Yeah.
It'll be measured in probably months, or sort of, maybe even in years before we get it. We're in the process, submitted, they keep changing the information we need. All the federal agencies seem to be doing this.
But the fact that there is at least a process in response to this
Oh, yeah.
event
Yep.
speaks to the fact that it wasn't normal maintenance or such, it was an emergency.
I think we've submitted for 50-some-odd thousand into in storm-related damages.
Okay.
I believe that number's higher than that.
Yeah,
Up there.
could be.
And then some of the projects that are going through from the FEMA, the emergency declarations of disaster, some of those projects have been fully submitted, fully reviewed, and signed off on as of today. Not all of them, but I believe there was 159, 187, and 189, so at least 3 of them, I'm pretty sure, were signed off, final sign off today. Out of the 7 total that we have, and the other 4 should follow fairly quickly.
Okay.
Is there an inventory list of culverts and
I have-
what you need to replace next year that you're hoping that 7,300 is gonna go for, or?
Yeah, I have, what I have in mind to replace right now, I have on hand. So it would be replacing that inventory I use with that, but that should cover it.
So what happens the next year if you use up your current inventory of replacement culverts? Means we have to order more, right?
Well, we want to replenish what we
Okay,
use.
that's
We
what
always
that's
have a
for.
supply on hand.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. Culverts was one of the things that there was a shortage on last year. And then with the storm events, there were communities reaching out to other communities
Yeah.
borrowing and buying and so on,
And there was some significant price increases on
very significant.
Anything else on highway?
Well, it's just that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I was just
I'm
asking if you had any.
concerned, I'm sure there's a rationale behind it, that what, of the things we've mentioned so far, and then when you bring in sidewalks, we're below the 5-year average on all of them. Is that, you know, what happens if, I mean, we spent 17,000 already this year. So what happens if we don't fund these?
We buy it anyway, and then we make adjustments elsewhere. Budget, as I mentioned at the onset of the budget review, is a guideline, it's a plan, it's an outline. It will be out of date and inaccurate by the time you adopt it,
Yeah, but-
because of things happen. So, you know, fuel, who knows what fuel will be? Who knows what the cost of culverts will be? We try to get it so that the tax rate reflects a general level of support that is needed to take on our year-to-year activities. We do try to rely on the annual, of the 5-year average, except in areas where there's a lot of volatility. You can pin whatever number you want to it, and it will be wrong. Maybe too high, maybe too low, I don't know. So we look to that, and lacking a specific plan where we're going to buy A, B, and C, we have quotes for A, B, and C. Lacking that, we do try to look more towards the average. And if we, as they've indicated, this is replacement culvert to restock our supplies. So it's not like we are ordering and installing a piece of pipe. We're using something from stock and we replace it at a later date. So we're not leaving ourselves exposed. But it's, you know, a gentleman I once met early in my career reminded me that, and it was in relation to the budget, he was the chairman of the budget committee, and he said, you don't build a church for Easter Sunday. And there's some truth in that. But there's never any line item in this budget that would go unattended if there was a need for it. And every year, we end up with a budget surplus of some, I'm going to say somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 worth of unexpended funds. So, in my world, if you end up at the year end with anything less than 2%, you're flirting with disaster.
Mhm.
So I think we're right about where we need to be.
Okay.
And those funds are drawn upon if and when necessary. And they'll always be necessary. But then during the course of the year, there'll be other things that are underexpended that then contribute to available funds to be available for other areas where they're overexpended.
Okay. Thank you.
Keith, anything?
No, I'd probably ask a bazillion questions about trying to forecast cost and stuff, especially when it comes to diesel fuel. I mean, I don't know, I guess diesel fuel at the pumps doesn't fluctuate the way home heating fuel does. Day by day, it can change, and it can change a lot. And so I could ask you a bunch of questions of how do you forecast for that? You can't.
It's a real crapshoot.
So,
Herb,
I think we're heading in the right direction.
Herb?
No, no, sir.
Jim? Road maintenance. I think we're still paying off for the major work we did a couple years ago.
Correct.
Do we have other roads that are starting to get your attention? I think he'd like Springfield Road addressed, you know.
Because we have a few residents in town that would love the same thing.
We do have a little bit of unexpended funds from last year's
Yeah.
budget that we intend to put into some of the hotter spots around town for this summer.
Are there any major roads or such that, you know, are gonna become a hot item, like say, what was it, Maple Street last year? You know, with the thawing and all became a hot topic. We're pretty much keeping an eye on the ones that may come that way.
Yeah, you know, and we have our, the RSMF study that we
Right.
completed, so we kind of go by that, we
Yep.
look at that and the projections on that. Maple Street fortunately has held up quite well to this point, hopefully it continues.
Yep.
That way, that's a road that sees a lot of traffic.
Right.
A lot of traffic.
Have we been successful at curtailing the truck traffic? No.
I'm not so certain of that. I actually had a truck behind me today, an 18-wheeler, and I stopped and talked to the guy, and I said, what app are you using? And he said he was using the Waze app. So.
You just can't read a sign otherwise? or-
Yeah, they plug into their GPS and that's what they follow. And I have reached out to the mapping companies to have, have alerts put on and.
I think you've said the same thing in the
It's
past.
deaf ears.
Yeah.
Did it for years.
Yeah.
I know some trucking companies get an assigned route,
Mhm.
and if the driver deviates off that route and there's an accident, insurance won't cover the accident because you deviated off a planned route. And sometimes those planned routes take you down a back road, and overall it might be the shortest distance, but for a tractor trailer, it's a disaster trying to drive down.
Yeah, there was a few weeks ago, we had a propane tank truck, 18-wheeler, 130,000-pound vehicle, tried to come across Maple Street and got turned around and got stuck.
It is a town ordinance, you have the ability to have written that person a citation for that.
He did receive a citation, from what I understand.
You can do that though, any one of your employees can do that. Doesn't have to be PD.
Oh.
I don't know if we want to have
It's a
our
town ordinance.
highway people feel like into that. Mrs. Spalding, you got a hand up?
And at the time that was done, I drove tractor trailer for many years. What you have is not adequate. Notice,
What, you mean the posting we have is not adequate to notify people not to take it?
that's right. The signs that you have out and the location of them are not adequate. Yeah, and that's not gonna stop what's happening there too, because if it's on their GPS, that's where they're gonna go, unless there's something there that tells them no. Clearly. Let's be real clear.
Yeah.
So DOT last year, they also installed some signage on Route 10 and Route 11 for truck traffic. And they're big signs, but to be honest with you, I mean, you kind of become oblivious to them as you're driving.
There are big green signs on the state roads right there at that intersection, and it's like I don't even notice them.
Yeah.
But oblivious to you because of the frequency.
Mhm.
Take a driver that has come from the Midwest and comes through, it's new to him. And those are the ones you need to pick up. The guys that go every day, sooner or later, they've learned that they don't take that route.
Yeah, well, they're just following the GPS. Yeah.
Well, the frequent flyers are gonna get the clue somewhere along,
Yeah.
either by the radio or something. And they then will not be your offenders, but the people who come through to that light. I sat at the pizza place one night, and an 18-wheeler pulled out and went right up. I called it in, and whatever happened, didn't see the sign, got fuel, and away he went.
Yep.
Go online, there's a bridge in Pennsylvania that has been trimmed many vehicles, and it's well posted, and they still go underneath it.
Or try to.
The numbers are phenomenal.
So we need a bridge like that here. All right, anything else for highway? Paul, any capital items or anything
Yeah, you
on
got
highway?
capital equipment on page 27.
Okay.
Mine's
Oh, good.
Greg, what do we have for vehicles and where are we parking them all?
Vehicles,
Yeah, equipment, mainly, like your excavator, the grader, things of that sort. Where are we keeping all that stuff?
we have 2 loaders, and we keep both of those in cold storage. All of our dump trucks, including 1 tons, the pickup truck, are kept either inside the shop at night or in cold storage. The grader and the excavator are stored outside over the winter.
Equipment trailer.
Equipment trailer is outside. The sidewalk tractor is inside, that stays inside. Our snow blower, the great big huge snow blower we have, that's inside. If you want me to list the water truck, the roller, small roller that we have, pavement roller, and the sweeper truck, those are kept over at the ash landfill on the way to Claremont, down by the gun range, in that little garage, which,
We also have a chipper and a bucket
we
truck.
have a chipper, a bucket truck, those stay outside, the bucket truck is under the lean-to with the standards hang. We have an infrared machine, we have a hot box for asphalt, we have 3 York rakes, 4 York rakes.
Yep.
Those are stored outside.
Signboards.
I'm sorry? Signboards.
Signboards, yeah, yeah.
Those are usually down in recycling in the lean-to, try to keep those undercover. Am I missing something? Probably. Oh, whacker, that's the small whacker, little loader, that's kept inside.
Motor vehicles, there's cemetery buildings and grounds, theirs are outside. One of the water sewer vehicles. What else is there?
Was that spare old police cruiser that's
That's
down there,
it.
outside?
Is it under your budget? Or whose budget does the lease payment for Econ for the garage come out of?
It doesn't come out of anywhere, well, the expense, it's a lease, and it comes into the general fund.
No, what we pay them for the two-bay garage out there,
Right.
the ash landfill.
Yeah, that's under, isn't that under the executive session, Paul, or executive section?
Yeah, it was, we're on carryover money right now, for this year. And for next year, it will probably be coming out of executive.
Since that's a highway use, is that not more appropriate out of their line, or why would it be over there instead of there?
It's just
Right hand, left hand, but still
I think
accounting-wise.
just because it's traditionally been a lease that our office looks after, but we can move it, as you point out, it all comes from the general fund. So in terms of its, if you look at its purpose, it could very easily be put in the public works. But predominantly, a lot of their stuff is housed there. Occasionally, some confiscated vehicles and things of that nature that go from the police department. They can go anywhere you like.
Anything else? All right. Capital outlay.
Page 27, lines 685, 67, and 8.
So if I can just comment on this particular line item, as you know, we've been slowly but steadily working our way towards funding our capital improvements program as a whole. My recollection is the value of that is somewhere, just for the sake of this conversation, around $1 million annually, which we are not likely to see anytime soon. But every year we take another bite, inch a little closer to setting aside money to start replacing some capital equipment. And this year we increased, asked for an increase to $200,000 for reserves that will help replace some of the capital equipment for the Public Works Department, Highway. The ones that are most, and I'll let the guys speak to this, but the ones that are, I think, are most clearly in need of replacement, very timely replacement, are the grader and excavator. Those are probably the first, certainly the grader first to go, and then maybe it's arguable between a truck and an excavator. But we're making progress, and with this level of funding every year, we're likely to be in a position where we'll be able to replace with some regularity most of the heavy equipment, the rolling stock heavy equipment. Public Works.
What is the cost of a replacement grader?
About 370 grand.
So we're
Give or take,
looking,
but if you give me a lot.
well, that's close enough, but we're looking at setting aside 200 this year
Right.
or next year.
Right.
And given whatever the lead time is for ordering a grader, if this budget passes and the 200,000 gets set aside for the grader and it takes a year to get the grader, would we be able to order it in anticipation of having the same amount next year?
Yeah, that would be our intent, is that we would order it upon passage or adoption at town meeting. And you're right, it will take, who knows what, 6 to 12 months to probably get one.
Yeah.
And then we would follow each year. We'd have a little, in the second year, we'd pay off the grader. And in the next year, we'd have a little too much, for instance, a truck. But we would be able to get a truck, and then a little bit would swap over to the next year.
Right.
And so over time, the first 4 or 5 years of a CIP are messy, because you're trying to get things to get into a routine, and you're playing a little bit of catch-up. And next year, if the opportunity presents itself, we're going to ask you for a little bit more in this area, because we're there, but it's not very pretty. And the cost of these pieces of equipment are going up faster than the amount of money we're putting aside. So we would probably, be asking you for, another 50 or 100 next year to get to that level where it's going to be nice and smooth and consistent.
Yeah.
But the grader is a very underappreciated piece of equipment. You'll know it when it's not there. You kind of take it for granted when it's
Is it used year-round?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's snow removal.
Dirt road maintenance.
Dirt road maintenance.
Yep, winter, yeah, certainly all summer, but in the winter time, we use it necessary. And it's unfortunately, this particular piece of equipment is balanced on the head of the pen. There are components on that equipment that we cannot secure if they go south.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that, because
Well,
people hear me.
where I was going with that is, if it's working now and it's not being used a lot now, sell it. Put it on the market and sell it for 50 grand.
Well, spring road maintenance, on the dirt roads, it's
Yeah.
probably valuable.
We talked about that, and as soon as we can secure the use of another one, we would do that.
Have you thought of
We use it
shopping
already.
for a low-hours used one, as opposed to ordering a brand new one?
Well, we would certainly consider that as soon as we find out what your position is on this. We don't want to spend a lot of time on something that may not come to fruition.
I'm just curious, because I'm a heavy equipment guy, and I drove a forklift for 18 years and put over 38,000 hours on it. And it was running fine. So, how many hours are on the grader?
I would have to, because I don't have that.
Is it over 10? 10,000?
I believe it's between 10 and 12,000.
Which isn't that much for a piece of heavy equipment.
That's not the issue with that
Control
piece of
panels.
equipment, it's the manufacturer and parts availability.
Yeah, I've heard about the electronic board that's gone south a couple times.
Yeah, I think it's, an age and the age of the vehicle and the fact that it's kind of a peculiar spec makes it very difficult for us to get parts for it.
Can it be retrofitted with an old style valve body?
It's all electronic.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of them that have a little electric switch. But
There's how many computers in that thing? 14 or 15?
15.
I'm just asking the question just because,
It's beyond my comprehension to do that.
because of
And I think the cost to do it would be, I couldn't even imagine what the cost would be.
I think what you looked out last year, whenever that board went out last time, you found some of those, they would literally rewire the board.
Yep. Yep. Yeah,
That follows a national search for the board itself
Yeah.
with no results, no success. So if that happens, you've got, how much does that thing weigh? 10,000, what's the weight of that thing? 30,000 pounds?
Yeah.
Oh, at least.
You got a 30,000 pound paperweight.
Yep.
It's not going anywhere. You couldn't even start it to get it onto a.
Well, that's what I mean, while it's working,
Yeah.
So at this
send
point,
it down the road, trade it in.
the budget is setting aside 200,000 for capital outlay for highway equipment in the the intent at this point is, it looks like the grader would
Grader.
be at the top of the list.
Right, and so theoretically, thinking out loud, a little theoretically, if the board approved it and got voted at town meeting, we'd probably start our search. We'd look at, new used kind of thing, and we'd look at new. And if there's an opportunity for us to buy one, for instance, somebody says, I got just what you want, and it's within the price parameters and so on and so forth, and we'll bid it out. We might buy it on a lease purchase, a 2-year lease purchase, and then the second year we pay off the balance of that account and get it here earlier. Because we're flirting with a disaster, I think, right now. And to your point, it's worth much more when you can drive it up onto a trailer than if you gotta have it.
That's what I'm talking, if it's working,
Yeah, so we gotta have something reliable available, reliably available to, it's gonna come in
Yeah,
this busy time of the year here.
yeah, that's the other thing, could you live without it?
I don't know.
Probably not.
Not if you're on a dirt road.
Yeah.
Is there a trade-in value for our
There is a trade-in value on that.
No, 27,000.
You pay somebody $10,000 to take it.
Pretty much.
Scrap metal. Or the circuit board, for somebody who's looking for a
Yeah.
circuit board. You might be able to sell that circuit board for more than the rest of it's worth.
And we'll throw in the rest of it with it.
You gotta take the whole thing to get the circuit board.
All right, anything else for highway capital outlay, Paul?
On the next page, 29, some road projects and work that has been proposed.
Where you at?
Page 29,
Yep.
line 715 and down.
Yeah. All right. Basically, we got sidewalk reconstruction for 130,000. Chandler's Mills Road Bridge replacement for 25,000. And Corbin Road Bridge guardrails for 25,580. And paving in at $1.
We will, our intent on the dollar, in case I caught your interest, is that if money becomes available during the course of the year, it's our opinion that we're going to try to direct it to paving, because we don't want to go 2 or 3 years without attending to some of the more demanding rates around town. So
Right. By having $1 there, it allows us to adjust it.
Yeah.
Yep. But sidewalk reconstruction, this is this something where if we did need to do paving, we could take money out of the sidewalks to do the paving, or pretty much?
I mean, it's a bottom line budget, so
Yeah.
theoretically you can move money around anywhere you want to. Sidewalks, that number was a good number for the first few years we were at it. And with the inflation of construction-related materials and whatnot, it effectively, basically doubled in 1 year. So we'll do as much sidewalk as we can do, depending on how the bids come in. And what the bid number is, we've got 2 or 3 or 4 different places where we can go from more involved to less involved to bigger sections, shorter sections. We'll do what the money allows us to do.
Bidding it by the foot or by the job?
Yes. All of those above that. What about 6 or 7 different?
I think we've got 4 different locations for this year.
Yeah.
So we kind of tried to stick to areas that don't require a lot of drainage or, pole relocation, anything like that, but areas that are needed.
So work on Maple Street, heading up Maple Street towards the cemetery, that would also require road work.
Road drainage.
Yeah, so that would end up being a large project.
I mean, if the numbers come in really high, we'll have to focus on just straight runs of paved sidewalk with a curb and resetting what's there, and we'll do what we can do. It'll really be determined of the costs.
Okay. And the bridge work, the Corbin Bridge, that's the abutments leading into it?
Yep, there's some rather old wooden guardrails.
Guardrails, yes.
On either side of it, we'll replace as soon as summer and materials allow.
All right, and Chandler's Mills, that would be our portion of what the state would...
Yep, we got a grant, so to speak, from the state for, I think it's down to what, 87,000.
Right around there, depending on the final cost.
Yeah. And we add this to it, and it's what we believe is going to be a sufficient amount of money to do that job.
Okay, and that would end up going out to bid.
Yes, it's a design build project that is
Yep.
being put together as we speak, and
Okay.
I imagine they'll be out this month.
Yeah, hopefully within a week.
So that would be a project that would be done this summer,
Yes,
along with all the other projects.
stack them up. All good.
Anyone else with questions? All good?
Yep.
All right. Paul?
I'm good on highway.
Okay. What do you want to take care of next? You want to
So we've
let
got
Ernie?
Arnold wastewater, we have Jonathan with cemetery buildings and grounds. So if they want to do one of those two, that would be great.
And I suggest cemeteries, buildings, and grounds only because it's still in the general fund, with all due respect to these guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in the general fund before we jump to water or sewer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
Good night,
Thanks, Craig.
Have a good night. Stay well.
What page, Paul?
Todd, quick question on the guardrails for Corbin Bridge. Is that going to be acceptable? I mean, it's showing as replacing these current guardrails with steel beam guardrail. Is that going to be okay with historic might have?
We spec them out for core 10, which is the rusty.
Mhm.
It looks like rusty weathered steel.
Just didn't know if that would fit with a.
But if they have an issue with that, I believe the funding there is probably sufficient to go either way. We could probably still do the
I don't know what was
The
there
timber,
originally.
yeah.
the
I think they were
timber.
timber.
Yeah.
Wasn't it just a fencing, like
It
it
was
was
like
like
two
two
split
split rail
rails.
fencing or something?
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind, it's a replica bridge too, and it has a metal roof on it now,
I
so.
know, I'm just trying to keep tempers at a minimum here.
Yeah.
It's safety. I mean, we want something that if somebody truly has an accident, we want the guardrails to stop them, so they're not down in the brook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're taking out the side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Okay.
just as long as I'm on that topic, we are planning on no charring that bridge in the spring, so, depending on
Okay.
whether.
Good.
So,
Okay,
Thanks, sir.
thank you. You can leave the door open, I think the library guys left.
thanks.
Page 5.
Yep.
5?
5.
128, so.
So Jonathan Flynn is the new cemetery buildings and grounds.
Welcome. You want to give us an update as to how it's going? You know, things, how you find it going, things you think should be changed, better, things things Todd is telling
We might
you?
be here a while.
I know you've got a small, 3-person staff, if you're fully staffed, only 2 right now.
Yeah, currently, sure.
And,
Usually 4 with a contingency in the summer, but it's looking rough.
But you're advertising for the 3rd person?
Always.
Okay.
Third full-time and Andy full-time.
Yeah.
Permanent part-time.
Permanent part-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you managed to keep at least even with what you got there, not falling behind too much, or?
Trying our best. We're knocking them out priority by priority.
Yeah.
I will say for Jonathan and Jim, they seem to keep things afloat. You know, they're doing the Opera House, they're doing all of the buildings.
Yeah.
They're doing the cemeteries, they've got burials on the weekends. There's not a dull moment for those guys.
Doing burials here in the winter?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that something we need to
Yes.
address at
Reconsider.
some point?
Well, as you may recall, it was probably, about a year ago we had this conversation, maybe even around budget time. We're one of the few towns that still perform winter burials.
Right.
Very few do.
Better than my
Well,
tenure.
sorry,
Less than a year, it's better than my tenure, we can talk about it.
has it? Okay.
Yeah,
Time
but I mean,
flies.
and certainly I don't think for the effort involved in thawing out the ground and all your work, you probably aren't charging what it really costs.
No, we don't. We don't recognize the overtime and the additional equipment that is required to do all that work. And I thought it was longer than a year ago, but we would like to be able to charge the actual costs. Because, I mean, this is their weekends, we call them in on overtime, and the fee that we traditionally charge is, it doesn't even get anywhere near close to covering the actual expense, the actual cash cost to us.
I mean, other communities that do not do winter burials, I mean, people aren't complaining, are they? But I mean,
Well, I mean, I suppose that depends on your expectations. You think traditionally you rely on the funeral home to provide for that period of time. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time this was covered or addressed by the board, there seemed to be a little bit of a reluctance, since we're only the last one of the last few. But there seemed to be a reluctance to give up that, not provide that service. And I understand that, but at least what we have to do is at least adjust the fee to cover the costs of covering the staff and the equipment, in my opinion. But that's maybe a topic for another day. But we're ready to give you a rewrite of the cemetery rules and regulations when you're ready for it.
Okay. Just to add too, that it's not just the burial, it's the ongoing, the maintenance, they keep the roads open throughout the winter.
Right.
So that it's like a road or a driveway, parking lot, anything else, it's plowed and maintained and accessible.
well, that would be done anyway, so people can at least get close to their loved ones if they wanted to visit in the winter, right?
I don't know. Some towns
Do other
some
towns just
don't.
sort of like close them up and
Yeah.
everyone rests for the winter?
Yeah. So whatever level of service you think is necessary or appropriate.
Well, if we decide, keep the roadways open, that's on us, but, winter burials, I mean, there's a cost involved in that we should be looking at. How many winter burials do we do?
This year thus far, I think we've done, the one we're getting ready to do, I think we'll make 4 this year. So it's not a lot, but it's.
Do you know what last year was? I know year to year varies, but I think last year it seemed like it was maybe 1 a month, 2
Yeah.
months, something like
I
that.
mean, it's
Not as much for us to deal with this year's, previous years.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah.
Guess I'd be curious to find out what other communities our size are doing.
Yeah, well,
Regards to maintenance of the roads,
Mhm.
in and out in the wintertime, and as well as, offering up that service.
we
Trying to
could
be as
do that.
consistent as we could with other communities, but.
We can do that. We did delve into what other communities are doing when it came to looking to get some cemetery software to manage the lots and what sale of lots and keep better control over that and better records. And A, it's expensive, but B, in calling it, we must have called a dozen different communities and got 13 different answers. It's just really depends on who's running the cemetery, what their particular habits and history has been. But we can certainly check and see who keeps theirs. I would think that would be fairly easy to figure out who keeps theirs open for the winter, who does winter burials. I think that the area funeral directors here would be able to tell us that quickly, because that's immediately of interest to them. So we can look into that.
And a salary study did them proud? I mean, is it,
Buildings and grounds?
are they gonna be able to see, that should help with their hiring and retention?
Yeah, I mean, if we can find somebody who will read the one ad, somebody, if we can find some loose, folks. But no, they've been included, and their budget reflects the full funding of that. Again, now the salary, I want to make it very clear, for the salary survey evaluated positions and not the people in the positions. So
Right.
they've given a range from this amount to this amount for this position, not for the person in that position. But it's fully funded. It should clearly,
Including the highway person Paul fired?
yes. Right.
All right, sorry to get off on cemeteries, I mean, you do a lot more and stuff. I mean, you also are working on the archive area down here, or? I don't know if you-
We work on projects around
Yeah.
town and various remodeling projects.
Mhm.
We keep all the buildings clean,
Yeah.
or try our best to.
Mechanics.
Yeah, we're also small engine mechanics. We've been working on our mowers down at our shop at
Where do you keep the mowers?
We
Because I live on Meadow Road.
Yeah, it's.
And I saw one go by and I'm like, why do you get a mower out in February?
So, for the winter, to keep our shop area kind of cleared out, we usually store them out in that little shed behind the rec center, that little
Yep,
shack out there. And then we're moving them back and forth to work on them. And then we go back there and store them until springtime.
Isn't that shack sort of ready to fall down?
Absolutely. I want little or nothing to do with it for 1 minute more than necessary.
Okay.
It's a liability waiting to happen.
And that's a shed we actually rent, right?
Correct. Well, we're giving you some, but it needs to come to an end yesterday. in my opinion.
Any questions?
Line 152, which is contracted services, page 7. Projected to go about 16 grand this year, you're only budgeting at 10. What are we contracting services for? And do we anticipate that going up perhaps if we're not able to mow the cemeteries ourselves?
Which one?
Next page, line 152.
Yeah, it says 10,000.
Yeah.
They requested 10,000 spent. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. On the 16, you threw me. You're projected for the year end, yeah.
Yeah, and my question goes along with, if we're not able to get staffing and we anticipate needing to contract more services?
I'm wondering if this is different, because in the description, it's contracted annual testing
Testing.
costs.
Yeah.
Is that like for,
So the tank out here in the yard and
like,
that.
Elevators,
fire system and all that stuff?
fire.
That's basically
My
all
bad for
all
not
that.
reading that line up.
Yeah. So, okay, it's not like going out and hiring a lawn
No.
company to come in and cut.
No, but that's an interesting topic, because at some point, if we can't garner more staff, at some point, it's gonna be cost effective to do that.
That's kind of what I was asking.
Yeah. And, but that presumes that anybody else has any employees either. You know, half the time when we're out looking for bids, people are saying, I'd love to do this, but I don't have the staff, I can't take on any more work, so. We're not unusual, we're not unique, we're suffering the same problems everybody else is, just not enough people want to work.
I will say 2 years ago, I did inquire with a few local companies, and in some of them, they're like, quite frankly, we don't have the staff to do it.
You know, like some of the big like, you know, the commons, some of these bigger areas, it would be easy to do. Have somebody come in, low supervision, just, you know, bang it out, get it done. Those would be likely candidates, would free up a lot of time for our staff, but there's nobody out there. So, we're taking applications, and everyone else come down from the lawnmower.
I almost hate to ask it, but I'm going to, because you brought up the common. There's some criticism as to the fact that the common got kind of muddy and ruts and all that. So that's going to create a little bit of a little extra work for you to restore it to what people expect this spring?
Yep, I was fully expecting it was going to be a very unfun, busy spring, trying to get the common just back to its original state.
And that, you will see an all hands on deck helping with that.
That is kind of the magic, you know, that I've seen anyway with our public works folks, water, sewer, they all do kind of pitch in when necessary. They cross lines, pitch in. But I think you'll be satisfied with the plan we're going to come up with, vehicle deterrence, you know, plan, and I think it will be very unintimidating. It will not detract, should not detract from the appearance of the common, but it should be effective. Unless people really want to become difficult, and then there's a solution for that too. But we're trying to do this in a historically sensitive, friendly, you know, kind of manner. But I'm not, because at least one member of the board here is not seeing the optimism. But I think that may be, you know, well-founded. There are people who, they just don't care. They just want what they want, and they'll do what they want, what they need to do. But I think we will deter most understanding people. They'll get it.
How are your mowers and such, all your equipment? Good working order?
We've been making them get back into good working order, yes.
Okay.
But it's some of it's getting old. They're racking up a lot of hours, especially our walk-behinds. They're racking up a lot of hours. It's way beyond my time, but some of them work. We've just put good, good parts into them to get them back up in a good running order to make sure they will, at the very least, run through this year.
Do you have a replacement program for your equipment? Like,
That's actually something I'd like to institute.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the next several years to
so that's
replace
something
them
you'll
over
work out
years
with
on.
Todd and such?
Come up with a plan.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Buildings and grounds, cemeteries? Any place else we need to go for buildings and grounds, or?
Just district court, the budget before the one you just looked at.
Okay. You also take care of the district court building?
The building maintenance of it, yes.
Yeah. You guys don't provide security?
I don't get paid for security.
Yeah. All right. Would you like to? So the building maintenance, basically that's $3,000 we have budgeted for that, and is that the line we're looking at, Paul?
There is a capital request towards the end of the budget for replacement of a new heating and cooling unit.
Okay, but that's outside buildings and grounds.
It's funded through one of our reserve accounts.
Okay.
But they oversee that equipment and that operation.
Right. Okay. Everyone good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for coming
Hope the
down.
winter remains mild for you.
Oh,
Good luck.
All right,
Thank you, Jonathan.
thank you.
have a good one.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
Wastewater treatment plant next?
Yes.
So where are we going on that?
Sewer section, page 51.
I'll put this one in upside down.
Always
I can adapt. All right.
No. No, I know, I'm still looking.
Why don't you go to page 51? Starts on 49, doesn't it? On my copy.
Already in sewer treatment.
Arnie, any insight, good things? Aside from the fact the feds want us to replace the whole system for $30 million?
Yeah, we just need a new plant, that's all. Which will get more expensive as time goes along,
Yeah.
when we're dealing with chemicals,
Yeah.
more personnel, more heat.
Yeah. But as it stands right now, what shape are we in?
Right now, we're keeping it running. I mean, bits and pieces here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So not to digress here, but there is a public informational meeting being scheduled for the 23rd.
Yeah.
23rd?
22nd, I think.
22nd.
Wednesday.
At the Opera House from 6:30 on, and our engineers will be here, as well as USRDA and the state, to give people an overview of the project, the costs, the funding stack, so on and so forth, and there'll be a question and answer period to follow. That meeting is separate and above the one that we will provide to you, which will be an image of, should be a reflection of the same meeting at your meeting on bonds
Yeah.
that you're required to have.
Right, the hearing on the bond.
Right.
Yeah.
So, should be good. People may not like the numbers, but the numbers are what they are. They appear to be reflective of other work being done elsewhere in the state for the same kind of operations. So I feel pretty comfortable, confident that the numbers are accurate, but they're shocking nonetheless. And we have a good funding stack. We're about 50% of federal state funding. which doesn't get too much better than that in this project, at least not historically. We are told that these are historic numbers. From my experience, they're historic levels of match. But it leaves still a substantial amount of money for the public. There's no other way to explain that. It's going to cost a lot of money. And the new facility will be bigger, be more complicated, and there will be additional requirements for additional staffing to meet minimum state required staffing levels. So I can tell you that we are anticipating some substantial increases in user costs between debt service and increased operations. There's just no way around it. And we have an administrative order pending, so not doing it would be unpleasant and costly almost immediately. Really no other viable alternatives that we're aware of.
Any other good news?
Project will start in '24 and should be done by '25 or so, and it's on schedule. The contractor that we're using, the engineering firm that we're using, from all accounts, is doing a great job, is on schedule and on budget.
And we just approved the next phase of their contract.
Right.
So,
Correct. So it's moving along with all due haste.
okay.
So we're in good shape for the shape we're in.
What shape are the lagoons in?
What in?
Lagoons.
Well, the state is looking at us as wanting to have them relined at this point. Novus, who's doing the evaluation, is trying to put them off because the intention is to use the lagoons as equalization basins and eliminating actual treatment. We're hoping that'll work. That in itself would be a horrendous expense to dewater both lagoons entirely, clean them right down to the gravel bottom and reline those. Something we want to avoid. But with the new testing requirements for groundwater, they're starting to see some bacterial samples coming back really negative. So we're kind of dancing the fence, if you will, with that situation. Novus is working with us pretty good.
Anything else to add?
No, I mean, overall, we've kept the plant in good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had the unit heater fail in the filter building this year, just recently. That's going to have to be replaced because there's only 2 in there anyway. And I'm down to 1. It's keeping the building warm, but if I lose that one, I'm going to be starting a charcoal fire in the middle of the floor.
Okay.
Everything else is pretty good. Effluent pumps got rebuilt.
A few years back, we had a concern about how much we were charging for people who pump out and deliver to us. Are we charging adequate for that now?
Well, right now we are.
Okay.
Given the current situation with a car wash that we have in town and the volume of water, I'm debating on coming forward and just asking for a rate increase on hauled water, just simply to see if we can deter the amount of volume that we're receiving. But we're gonna let that go for a little while and see what happens. We're not losing money with it, but it's just, we're being overpowered.
Just too much.
Too much car wash water. I mean, when you're bringing in 10,000 gallons of car wash water a week.
Is that by truck or?
Yeah, 2,500 gallons a pop.
That's all the sediment, soaps, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the best way to resolve it would be to run a sewer line to the top of Guiled Hill. Put them right on town sewer.
Okay, so how does that differ from just the truck, the fact that it's all at once versus
Well, it starts when we get cold weather because everybody's got to have the car washed.
Yeah.
So it really picks up in volume. I mean, I think I've had
2 loads, maybe 3 loads of septage brought in
Okay.
over the course of December, January, and this much in February. And all the rest of it is car wash water. The garage on top of the hill brings in 1 load a week, 1,000, 1,200 gallons at a time. No issue, never has been. But the car wash on that end of town, and we've asked them, back to Holler, called them this afternoon, talked with them about it. You know, can you go check it? 28 gallons of water per car, seems like an excessive amount of water to be using.
Rate adjustment usually fixes that problem.
Okay.
That's town water up there too, isn't it?
No, they're private. up there.
Right.
Are they really?
Yep. They're grown well.
Anything else on wastewater treatment plant? All good? Okay, of course, a couple of you guys are on, got your own septic systems anyway.
Still costs.
Yeah, it does, it does. Okay. All right. Paul, anything in capital?
Not for all.
I just need that PO on that Modine heater, I haven't found it, I haven't got it yet.
Okay.
So we go back to page 49.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arnold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Back to beginning of sewer.
Have a good evening, everyone.
All right,
Thank you.
Too.
Okay. So what did we do to deserve a big jump in workers' comp? Just no change in classification, just a change of what they rate?
Experience rate,
Okay, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it's a big increase.
percentage wise.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the liability insurance went down. All right, any questions on administration? Looks like, under services, everything looks pretty much carried over the same as last year.
With the exception of salaries, it's pretty much.
Right. That's all based upon the
So,
wage study. So Todd, anything, what's going on with sewer? I mean, any big projects coming up or concerns or?
Just the annual, the program that we've been doing, the slip lining.
Yeah.
A continuation of that. That is a much needed, kind of head off the I&I issues that we're having with infiltration,
Yeah.
groundwater, not only the lines, the manholes themselves. We still have a lot of old clay pipe in the system. So targeting areas that we see infiltration, we see a lot of maybe sand in the lines, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And we've got a pump station we're finally getting around to upgrading.
Yep, the Riverbend pump station replacement will start in April. I believe the only piece they're waiting for now is one of the pumps to arrive. Most of the other equipment has arrived, the piping, electrical, anyway, most of it.
Yeah.
It's on schedule to start in April or May, depending on the weather.
Yeah, it'd be good to have the pump when you do the pump upgrade.
Yeah.
And that will be a huge upgrade for that facility. Right now, everything is down below grade. The guys have to go down 27 feet below grade into confined space to, if there's an issue, that's where they're at.
Yeah.
When we're complete, everything will be up on grade. The pumps will still be down in, but they'll be on a rail that, can be pulled up out, so we shouldn't see anyone
And we should be able
going
to get
into a
replacement parts.
confined space and, I mean, that's like the
Craps out,
worst,
and
yeah.
you can get it fixed in a day or two.
Wasn't it gonna be under warranty for a while?
Yeah, of course, yeah, but I mean, there won't be, now you can't get this stuff repaired. I mean, I think the pumps there were 40 years old.
Yeah, we just had one out this last week, gave up the ghost.
We get our money's worth out of them for the most part.
Okay.
But even at that point, it's like a grader, there's only so many times you can go to that well.
All right, any other questions on sewer?
And by the way, that supports the majority of our industry in town.
Right.
That pump station. If that pump station goes down, everybody has to shut down. A lot of jobs at stake. And the environment, because an overflow of that well, be a matter of minutes before it hits the river.
Then you get a lot of people with a lot of initials. All right, all set on sewer? All right, Paul, anything under capital and sewer?
There's $10 million bond article for a sewer treatment plant, but other than that, then you're all set.
How many million?
10.5
At the moment.
That's our share.
Okay.
But we're pretty sure that number is going to settle pretty much right there. It's now been basically published. And I think that all the folks studying that were a little reluctant until just recently to go with that number until they were pretty confident that was going to be sufficient.
On page 53, SWS collection system maintenance, is that one from, is that a capital or?
It's in capital, that was the slip lining that Todd talked about.
Okay.
Doing every year for the last 4 years.
Okay. All right.
I should point out too, that's also part of the,
Asset management.
well, asset management, but also part of the operating permit for the wastewater plant, is that we do a certain percentage of the system. So,
Well, do any of you have any questions about the whole question about II and lines leaking, things of that nature? I really understand that. I'm pretty sure you're aware, but a lot of people don't understand that those systems are constantly being bombarded by groundwater and rain, stormwater, leaking in from leaky manhole covers, cracked lines. And you can almost guarantee you're going to get II within a matter of days or weeks of a brand new system. It's just the nature of the beast.
So all the work that was done on First, Second, Third, Fourth, and Knoll Street, all that's probably leaking now, even though we haven't finished paying it off.
I would hope not.
If it's not, there will be soon. Because it's the motion and movement of the earth. The cooling, the heating and cooling of the earth that makes the soils move, and eventually they crack joints or seams. And if the pipes are old enough, particularly like clay pipes, they get pressure on them long enough, and they eventually crack or cave in. And that's why when Todd was mentioning, you see sand in the system, it's an indication you got something that's broken. We can now go and look in the system with cameras and find out where the break is.
All right.
Staying on theme with fuel, 51, line 59.
Page 51?
Yep. 4-year or 5-year average is 44.86. What am I missing? What changed that starting in 21, 22 that we only used $180? 6 months actual this year is $262. But yet we're still going at 5,000.
Which line are you on, Jim?
59. Trying to bend my head around that one.
Well, it's been low.
That's what, covers 50% of the cost.
Seems like either we're not charging that to the right account, or
Right.
something's happened there that's way up.
Yeah, that should be half the fuel cost for the whole department, vehicles, equipment.
Right.
Like it's not getting charged to the right line or something,
Pump
or
station.
not getting credited correctly.
Right, it should be trued up at the end of the year.
You were way off last year,
Yeah, those numbers have.
way off again this year, so it's gonna
I'll even check it.
horribly skew your 5-year average if that's really
Right.
what it is.
Usually we take those
Maybe that's
deliveries
why the
and
others
parse them
survive.
out at some point. I don't know why that hasn't.
I mean, we try to be efficient, but
That's really good,
can't
Scott, if
claim
that's the
that one.
case. Just saying, that's something to look at, because it's gonna
Yeah.
screw up your 5-year average.
Right, yep.
All right, anything else? All right, where to next, Paul?
I would say we come back to water, page 39,
3.9?
39.
All right, how we doing order-wise?
Plenty of it. We're in good shape at the moment.
Okay, and we've got a delivery system that'll make sure it'll get to us?
That's a different matter. We've got sufficient source, but I don't know about the delivery. So, as some of you may remember, we did improve the source access, if you will, at Gilman Pond. Probably, well, that was actually last year, we finished it up. Still fooling with the paperwork. But that increased our capacity by 400 or 500%.
That was deepening the intake?
Yeah, I always kind of affectionately refer to it as the straw. We took the straw and stuffed it further out into the lake.
Amazing how
And
expensive
deeper.
that
And
is.
so if you think about, the lake as a, inverted triangle, so to speak. So the deeper you go, the more water is above you that you can have access to. So we have, I can't remember the number, but it's between 400 and 500% more water than we had originally when the intake was near the surface. So that's been great, but I say that with the caveat that surface waters are still not the most desirable resource because they can be easily compromised by the climate. You get an invasion of beavers, somebody drives a snowmobile across the thing when they're not supposed to and drops it into the lake, it can be easily compromised. So the second source is Pollard's Mill, which is a great source that, it's a gravel well, underground well, that's good. And between the two, they alternate back and forth. But, it's, both of those sources are attached to lines coming into town that are 100 years old, for the sake of this conversation. Over 100, Some of them are older. And they're not terribly reliable, they're old, they've, done their duty. And we're putting in over $2 million, we're about to start putting in over $2 million worth of new lines. The analysis has been done, the plans are being drawn up. We're going to look, arguably, we're going to look at the most susceptible sections of those lines, the ones that are oldest, for one reason or another, most susceptible to failure, and we'll replace those first. But there are tens of millions of dollars worth of work that needs to be done out there, and this is just a small start. I would argue you have to do this pretty much every few years to have a hope of keeping up with it. Meanwhile, we are into the design phase and permitting of a new well in North Newport, which is a $3.5 million project. We have secured grants for $3 million of that. One of the grants came with a requirement that they wanted to see some local stake in the game, and so there's a $500,000 segment that we're being asked to fund locally, and we were going to ask you to consider that as a Selectmen's warrant article. And if we approve that, we will have sufficient funds that will be fully funded and will go forward, and construction could start as early as, some people have said 23, but I'm having trouble seeing it, probably more likely 24, a fairly short construction season. And if that happens, that would bring an equal amount of water from that site, which is pristine and surrounded by pretty much non-developable property, to match what we have in the southern part of town. So you have water in the south, water in the north, two totally separate delivery systems. So the town would be pretty well bulletproof for its water supply going forward for 100 years or more. So it's really a very important, I can't think of probably a more valuable investment in our utility systems than, with a greater return than that particular project. At comparably short money, I did the numbers the other day of how much was 500 some odd thousand of the total project. I can't remember what it was, but it's 17% or something. It's a pretty small ask to get a tremendously valuable resource. So other than that, the operating budget is pretty flat, but there's some money in there for increased salaries for the staff. But otherwise, it's pretty unremarkable budget.
Barry?
Well, this is not to do with what's in front of me here, but when you set all water and sewer fees, are administrative costs figured into that?
And there will be, sorry to digress, my memory's going to fail me here, March 1st, I believe it is, we're doing a similar info meeting at the Opera House at 6:30. Our engineers will be here, and we're getting the word out the best we can to the community. If anybody has any questions or concerns or interests in the water, this proposal, to come to that meeting, our engineers will be there. Be a public information session followed by a question and answer period. And then they will be here also on the same night when you consider the matter for a bond issue, unless you want to pay for it in cash.
So Paul, in each of those two budgets, under administration, there are a variety of costs to other administrators in there, like about 20%.
Right.
And that's calculated into the fee?
Yes. Because that fee, that fund stands alone.
Yes.
It's funded by the users. That fund benefits from, for instance, Paul's time in managing their accounts and paying their bills and all that.
Okay.
So they pay a share. Everybody who touches it pools their money.
Okay. Thank you.
What about, any capital areas here, Paul?
I don't believe beyond the well there is.
Okay. Todd, what about the equipment for water and sewer? About as good as everyone else's?
Yeah, I mean, they may be a little not as bad. We have had some new purchases in the past couple of years. We have the Vector, that was added last year. That has been a tremendous tool to add to what they need to do on a daily basis. The sewer jetter that's maybe 5 years old now, I think. These are kind of big item tools that they use on almost a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it makes their life a lot easier and their job a lot easier to do, accomplish with things. They have a backhoe, a small backhoe, and a percentage share of one of the older loaders. So if they're loading material or something like that.
Okay. Is water and sewer something that needs a capital reserve for replacement of this equipment going forward?
Mm-hmm. Should.
All right. Anything else on water? Did we... Let's see. Treatment, water treatment. Pretty much this is the same filtration plant. Next page, that's basically
Right, that's correct.
running fairly, I mean, it's not much you can go wrong with the sand.
No, so one of the things that we did with the intake project, we came in under budget on that, and we were able to take some of the extra funding and do some work to the filter beds as part of that project.
Okay.
So we went in we did an assessment on the filter beds, kind of looked at where they were at in their life cycle, and it was determined that by adding, I think we've maybe an average of 4 to 6 inches of sand in the filter beds.
They will extend the lives.
Yeah, we kind of brought them back to the, the standard they should be at.
Okay. Is there, did we have to upgrade the monitoring for that a few years
A
back?
couple of years ago, we installed the SCADA system.
Okay.
So that was at the water treatment plant and the Pollard's Mills well station when we redid that.
Okay, that needs to be monitored.
Yep.
Physically monitored every day?
Yeah, so that's, the guys on call, they can go on a computer or a laptop.
Okay.
They can bring it up, they can see what's going on.
Okay, they don't have to physically visit the treatment plant, do they?
They still do Monday through Friday.
Right.
Yep. And then on the weekends, they'll get numbers and check in on it.
Okay. All right. Jim?
Contracted services, where does that come out of?
Which one was
So if you, when you hire outside companies to assist with a main break or something like that, what line does that come out of?
I think we moved that to contracted services.
Is that 47? Line 47 on 41?
I was looking at the description, I didn't see that was.
There's some money under 83,
Mm-hmm.
line 83, account 338.
Okay.
Then there's another one up at line 47.
But you're trying to find out, if we bring in another piece, heavy equipment piece, what does that come out of one of those contracts?
Correct.
Yeah. So one of the things we're gonna start to work towards is that traditionally, in a lot of places, when wastewater or cemeteries or sewer use a piece of highways equipment, there's a charge to that fund. And those funds are collected by the general fund. And those funds are retained for the replacement of that equipment over time. And it takes a lot of pressure off of the capital improvements program. And vice versa. If for some, that's usually the way it goes, but if for some reason water had a piece of equipment, I can't think of an example right now, and they loaned that to highway, there would be an internal charge for that as well. They're usually very attractive, better than the rates we would pay an outside contractor. But that process results in a considerable amount. In my past experiences, it resulted in 5 and 6 figures worth of additional funding for equipment every year. So it can make a big difference.
You think it's more cost to go that route or to go with a shared percentage like you do with one of the loaders, where 20% comes out of, shared budgets? Which way makes more sense, I guess, is what.
Yeah, I think there's room for both, actually, in certain circumstances. We have to kind of drill into that, define that.
Because I think of equipment like the excavator is a great example of something that would be of huge benefit for, could be grounds, water, highway, of course. I think it's
And when we purchase them, we
unique
do,
funding.
when we purchase them, we do break them up. You'll see, 60% here, 20% there. So we do share that expense, but there's also room for some charges, operating charges throughout the course of the year. We're going to look into that and see how we might structure that, recapture some of those expenses.
And there are times when we just, whether it's staffing or we need a bigger piece of equipment. I mean, sometimes it's just, when you're out there at 10, 11 o'clock at night and you've got water blowing out of the ground and, geez, am I going to have to call the state here in another hour or two? Or, it's, at the moment you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, you've had times out there where you try to shut off the water and the valves don't work and you have to bring in the people who, basically strap on a valve and punch through into the pipe with a new one.
The number one priority is just to stop the water, fix the leak, and get the service back on.
I don't know, one time I was out there talking with the guys that do that, it's like they're busy all over New England, from one place to another.
Well, it's dangerous business. People don't really understand how high the pressure is on a water line sometimes. And you poke a hole into a water main, and you better, Better be ready for what's gonna follow.
YouTube it.
Yeah. You know, the old saying, drinking water out of a fire hose, that's if you're still breathing.
There's always gonna be those outliers, but that's gonna be the case.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about our daily equipment that we have, that
Yep.
there are more unique ways to fund the replacement of them.
Yep.
Yeah, all the reps could be better served.
Yeah, we're playing a little bit of catch-up, you know, for years and years and years. I mean, capital improvements programs aren't really effective, you know, for the first 5 or 10 years. After that, they're magic. But, you know, it's getting everything kind of in line, in sequence, and then after that, it's like a no-brainer. It's great.
Still waiting for that 2-for-1 special to come out.
You know,
Yeah, live in hope.
All right, anything else on order? Paul?
Public Works Garage, last thing we need to talk about.
Okay. What page?
Page 17.
is Rick still waiting for airport?
No. I don't know what he's doing, what he's up to. He might have fallen asleep. He's still online.
Okay, well, maybe we do. All right, highway. Your garage, correct, yeah, garage. So Public Works Garage, any highlights?
Not really. Oh, that one's pretty flat.
All right, you've got buildings and grounds, have they been down there a year yet? Or they moved in last spring?
Yeah, they've been there about a year now.
Okay, that's working out.
Yeah, we've got them kind of nestled in, using them here and there.
Okay. Hmm. Anyone have anything?
You've got equipment stored at least 3 other places besides Public Works?
Yes, we utilize Public Works, we utilize the old recycle building, we utilize the shed barn at the ash landfill, and we utilize the, I guess, what is it, the shed behind the rec center there.
Yeah.
I don't even know who owns that. Up to 4 or 5 bay garage out there,
Plus the metal garage?
plus the metal garage.
It's 5.
Yep.
Any thoughts to consolidating all your equipment in one place? Eliminating 4 at least?
That would be the ideal.
Outbuildings?
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Been any thoughts or plans to that effect, or is just, because we're at least gonna be losing one of them
Right,
with the rec center.
yep.
And that raises.
2 really, rec center.
Yeah, that raises an interesting logistical problem too, because from the time we start the community center to the time we can alter, take down or build a new facility in place of the rec center, it's gonna be a year or more. In fact, you can't take down the rec center and start building a new facility at that location until after the new rec center, community center is open, and then you have construction time. So you're probably looking at more like 15 to 18 months where we won't have that space. And then there's also a good question as to whether or not, is that the highest and best use for that property? Should we sell the building as is, where it is, take the building down, sell the property? But to your point, it would be be much more efficient and better for the equipment if we can get it in fewer places and more of it under roof than we presently do. And we would like to suggest that, and I think it's a very cost-effective alternative, is to, the estimates that we've gotten for the construction of the new facility where the rec center is are north of $400,000. I think for about half that, we could renovate some existing space and be much better off and be able to do it simultaneously with the construction of the community center, because we won't have to wait for one to be empty to start the other.
That was kind of my question to Craig earlier about how many millions of dollars of equipment do we have sitting out in the snow?
Well, you figure just the
And-
grader and the excavator is,
The lease payments that we have to Econ, to others, plus other additional buildings to maintain, it just,
Right. So, I cut to the chase here. I think there might be an opportunity for us to reinvest that money elsewhere, such as in our existing facility of Public Works.
Right, I mean, since the school board voted to not pay rent for their space, my anticipation is they plan to move out, since they're not willing to pay rent. And that's the way we should proceed.
That would be our expectation. We've made several inquiries, and they have yet to confirm their intent. We have the vote. We have never received the letter that supposedly was going to be sent to explain it to us. And I've asked several times what the story is, and we've gotten nothing in response.
what would that do?
What would what do? Oh, well, you mean what the school board vote was? As I understand it, was that they were not going to pay their rent to us next year.
There was no vote. That's bull, and you've got to know it.
So anyway, I understood that there was a vote taken and a direction given that there was to be a letter sent to us to explain the school board's position, that they were going to redirect the rent for the garage, additional rent, and use that to make improvements, basically leasehold improvements in the 2 bays that they presently occupy. And I've asked the school several times to confirm that, and they have not to date responded.
According to the minutes of the October budget workshop held, there was a vote to not pay the rent, but to invest that in betterments. And the vote passed 5-0. And to me, there was no prior discussion between the school district and the town, your transportation person and our public works director, about trying to work out something going forward, seeing what could be done to improve things or such. Just a vote to, it's like, we're not going to pay rent here anymore. And pretty much my feeling is the town, if we let that slide, the school district, say everyone else should just be able to say, well, I'm not going to pay the town this, they're not going to do anything. And my feeling is if the school's not willing to pay rent for use of the bays in the highway garage, then good luck. I wish them well with their new location.
So, Mr. Chairman, as I said, I've solicited a response several times and asked that specific question: are you going to pay rent at the new rate that the board expressed an interest in? We also have asked them to install a meter to meter and to pay their electric bills, because they consume a goodly amount of power there. And so I've specifically asked that question, and I have not received the answer.
Right.
They've answered that they're willing to pay the rent for the facility up through the end of this year, and nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
So I would just soon, go ahead and make our plans. From what I understand, I'm told that there is no maintenance of any consequence being done there, but they're just pretty much just storing equipment indoors. I'm not, a bus aficionado, but most of the school buses I've ever seen are stored outdoors.
Yeah. And I'm going based upon minutes of that October workshop that had the vote. So
We would propose to convert that space, create space for the ambulance, the third new ambulance, which needs a warm, secure environment, and provide other space for buildings and grounds and some public works equipment. And it would, the building is occupied regularly, it's visited, it's maintained, it's cared for. It would probably be a better odds-on bet to have that equipment there than in the various 4 or 5 spaces we have around town that are cold, seldom occupied, seldom visited, and so on and so forth. So if the board is amenable to that approach, we would head in that direction. I asked the superintendent to inform me of their intentions at the latest last week, and have had no response whatsoever.
Thoughts, anyone?
I think what it sounds to me like the school wants to improve the space. Would there be options for the school to improve a space out there that would not include those 2 bays if you did something different with those bays?
Sure, if they're they're not really, from what I'm understanding, they're not really doing maintenance work, so there's not like a mechanic environment that needs to be maintained there. If they're really looking for just storage, if the board was so, so motivated, we could easily give them, say, a land lease on that same property for them to build cold storage, shed-like, facilities that could park all their buses under roof if they chose to, and we could run a conduit, an electrical conduit out there and give them electrical service, and they can plug in all their engine blocks or whatever they want to do. And from what little I know about it, that would be better housing for buses than in most places. And you could enter into a land lease agreement for that for the next 50 years or whatever you chose, and let them do whatever they want there, give them the opportunity to build as they see fit.
How many buses are stored there?
I don't know how many you figure, a dozen, 10 altogether, 10, 12.
Do you know how
So,
many?
Most are outside.
each bus driver,
Between outside and, I think they stuff, I know they get 3 or 2 into the barn.
They put a couple of the smaller vans and small bus and a couple of bigger ones in.
so the driver's got to drive their car down there, park.
Yep.
There's ample parking for,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
There's loads of parking down there. I mean, if they put up, a cold storage bays, if you will, for 10 or 12 buses, it wouldn't make any difference to us whatsoever.
Right, but realistically, no one parks their buses inside or undercover. They're all
Not
outside.
many.
But so, as I said, my feeling is, since I'll go back and look at the minutes for that mid-October workshop, but I'm pretty sure I saw it in there, that they voted not to pay rent next year, and my feeling is if your tenant's not paying rent, they're deciding to go elsewhere. And we will utilize that, plan to utilize that space for, town vehicles and use.
I don't know if their intent was to go elsewhere. Their intent, I think, probably was to do improvements or do things differently at the same place. So if our intention was to take those 2 bays over, then I think we would be equally served to afford the school the ability to have a place to keep their buses. Alternative.
You're not saying the town would build that, are you?
No, if they wanted to do that, as far as what they said, leasehold improvements, then so be it.
I think what we're also hearing is we've not heard back from the administration to basically Hunter's requests for information on what their plans are.
Yeah, and my messages have been, I think, very clear, in that, please let us know at the latest next week. If we don't hear from you, this is the direction we're going. We're going to go ahead and assume that you're not interested in using that space going forward, and we will make plans to repurpose the space. So I don't know what's going on north of here, but I haven't got any feedback.
Jim, are you asking a question?
Yeah, I was asking what,
At this point, with the disinformation that's been presented here, I will not comment,
okay.
other than the disinformation. That man is not communicating, and with the process that he's using and what he's doing is unacceptable. It is not one hand and the other hand of the same body. So if you people aren't feeding him that, then where is it coming from? Jeff, your statement is wrong
Which statement?
on the vote.
Okay. As I said, I'll check.
So in anticipation of that interpretation, you all have copies of the emails I can send them to the superintendent right there on the table, so you can interpret them as you will. So,
Do any of you interpret that the school has said they're not paying and they're getting out?
that's what I've heard.
Yeah. I think most of us do.
Paul, were you at that meeting?
Unfortunately, I was.
And do you have a different interpretation of it?
That meeting was a discussion. That meeting was not votes, that was just a discussion.
And during that discussion, did you say you didn't want to pay?
No.
You
No,
said
Matter of fact, it's in the budget to be paid, current year.
current
The
year,
only-
current year,
The only debate,
not next year.
no,
That's correct.
it's in next year also.
Well,
The point, never mind.
I mean, we've made.
I think there's been ample communication, but it seems to me, in all honesty, Bert, it's been one-sided.
It has,
Yeah.
and that's absolutely correct, because your board, those decisions are coming from where? Are you doing it with this man here? Because we have to do it at a meeting. We do not do our business outside of that, because we are required by law to make our decisions and have our conversations in public. So how is this information getting conveyed on his authority or whose? So.
Conveyed to whom? Conveyed to whom?
To the other side, the school side.
I mean, the school side.
Yeah.
Well, he's authorized to enter into, trying to gather information about agreements. And it would appear to me that there's not just this item, but other items that we're waiting for communication on.
Okay.
And there's almost a weekly email that goes out there accounting for, okay, you've answered this question. You haven't answered this one, this one, this one. What is your position? We understand there was a school vote. We understand you were directed to issue a memo. We haven't received that. What is your intent? The answer is we're going to pay for this year, and silence on the second year. The question has been asked, what is your intent for this year? What is your intent for next year? So it's been ad nauseum laid out to the dollar. Are you going to participate in this expense? Parentheses, the expense for this year, for next year. Are you going to pay, are you going to participate for this program for this year? Parentheses, amount for next year, parentheses, amount. I don't know how else we can, and it's based on, my actions have been based on the board's previous comments about wanting to have a higher rent for next year. That was communicated. There's nothing else being communicated this way or that way without the board's knowledge.
So on the increase in rent, Jeff Kessler came here and said he had done a survey. Nobody else commented on that. So a decision was made on that by this board?
The board expressed an opinion or an interest in going in a particular direction.
One member suggested.
All of us are interested in getting the information needed so that we can move ahead with our budget, okay? That's a prime interest to us. It's our budget. And getting that settled. And there are a variety of areas, or a few areas, that we're still waiting on. Just need an answer. Now, it would not be, I'm going to just tell you, it would not be acceptable to me if on their own, the school board said, well, we're not going to pay rent, but we'll put money into improving what we have there for our buses. You got to pay rent. No such, Barry Commoner said a long time ago, no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? So that's where I am with it, Barry. I'm right up front with you.
And the school has responded in certain cases and said, no, we're not going to pay for next year. In fact, they responded in one category that said they're not paying for the current year on a joint project that has been going on year after year after year. So I don't know what the problem is.
guess we ought to either resend that, do it again, just cases they got put into a spam folder by accident or who knows what, but I'll just reiterate that again, because here we are trying to do our budget.
Yeah.
It would be nice to know what we got for coming in and what we have for
Sure.
expectations for 23.
I'm happy to do that, but she did respond to portions of an
yeah.
email and not cover certain other portions of it. So she's getting my emails, but I'd be happy to, I'll send as many as you want.
At least with one school board member being cognizant of that email coming, that might be a little more on our radar.
Come on.
That's my thought anyway.
I have to find the minutes. Let's see the minutes here. I have them downloaded at home, so we'll find them. So what's the pleasure of the board at this point? Contact the school administration, find out what their intent is next year?
I mean, here's some of the, that's fine, I'll do that until the cows come home, but at some point, the funding to prepare that space, as opposed to the funding to prepare a standalone building, is an integral part of the community center, and that budget is forming right this second. And I expect that project to go out to bid within a week or two. So whether we're building a separate utility building or not building a separate utility building, how that money gets redirected, in other words, if it's, I'm reserving $400,000 for that building and I don't have to spend it, I can redirect 200 towards the public works facility, for instance, and I can redirect 200 of that same amount towards further expenses for the community center. So we are right there. This project is intended to begin.
But they still, at this point, should have the option of answering our questions, the school board.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay,
this has
I
nothing
mean,
to do with
I don't want to
school.
pull the rug out from underneath, but at the same point, I want some responses. We've already received some responses, they're not going to pay for this, not going to pay for that.
Right.
As long as Allison's here, they'll pay for something else, but they won't after she leaves.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
And a lot of this discussion about possibly doing something with that is because of the lack of, or what we thought was a vote that they were not gonna pay rent.
Right, it was at that
That's where the whole
moment,
conversation started.
right, at that moment, we started looking at alternatives.
Yes.
And that was all of a sudden became an alternative, and quite frankly, a very cost-effective alternative. It could save us, 6 figures to go in that direction instead of building a separate building.
When is our next budget discussion?
Thursday?
No.
Thursday's the dinner, right?
Friday,
Thursday.
Thursday,
then if you
23rd.
need it.
What's that?
A week from Thursday if you need it.
I think we're gonna need it. Agreed?
Agreed. That gives the school ample enough time to respond, for you to formulate a proposal back to us and for us to make a decision.
Sure, yeah. I
So,
mean, if I understand it correctly, again, not to be argumentative about it, but the decision about this was made in, I think it was October. We're still waiting. So, but we'll be happy to send them another inquiry.
yeah, I don't want to pull the rug out, but
right.
there won't be a rug if we don't get responses.
Yeah, I don't know what else to do. At some point, I think we just have to move on with our own interests.
Okay. What else?
That was a detour.
Hmm?
That was a detour.
Oh, what about airport?
We were headed to the airport.
Airport, yeah, that's right. I know, Rick, that's gonna.
Is that it? Public Works then, we're good?
Are we good?
You're good.
All right.
Anything
Thank
you wanna add?
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
Has your grader got lights on it? You can go out and plow a few of those pretty roads there if you want to do it. I'm just kidding. You do enough.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
All right.
So, airport's an interesting situation.
Is he still
Rick
there?
still here?
I don't know, he's still signed in, but I don't see him popping up on the screen. Oh, wait a maybe we spoke too soon? That could be him. There he is. Hey, Rick.
Eric?
So the airport's in an interesting situation. The,
What page are we on, I'm sorry?
this is
in the air.
59.
59.
Good evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
The budget is largely unchanged, with the exception of wages and whatnot. With the exception of the part that's committed to other improvements. So we have an interesting little dilemma here. As you know, we have decided to get involved in the NIPIAS program, and you'll see an expense in there for $20,000 for our share of the a new master plan. So we've negotiated a contract with Du Bois and King to do the airport master plan, and that is actually a little bit more than what we need, but it's 20%. That's intended to represent our 20% of that overall project, and the 5% running. So our 5%, 20,000. The state and FAA pick up the remaining 95%. And that's all going fine. The thing that has happened in the meantime is that, and some of this is a little old information, some of you have heard before, there is a crack in the sump of the fuel delivery system. And Rick, you'll correct me if I say anything materially wrong. But the crack, it's been suggested that it be sealed with a particular product. That it's my understanding, far and wide, that product is an accepted sealant in 49 out of the 50 states. And New Hampshire happens to be the only state where they don't allow that particular sealant to be used in a petroleum environment. So the cost of a Band-Aid fix to this, in any event, was, based on information we collected last fall, was somewhere in the $6,000 to $9,000 range to go in and kind of Band-Aid this thing. And you have to take apart most of the system to do it, and then get in there and do the patch. And there was no guarantee. The company was not going to provide us with a guarantee. Not for a day, not for 30 days, no, just nothing. So the state wasn't real thrilled about that, and so there was conversation about replacing the system, the sump and the fuel pump itself, and pieces of parts. Because we had trouble with that fuel pump, if some of you remember. I don't know if you were on the board at the time, Jim, but I think others were, about getting parts and making repairs to that were quite onerous. The parts were questionable, some parts could be fabricated, and so on and so forth. But that pump is quite old, and so we got some quotes that seemed to suggest that you could replace all those guts for about $37,000. So you got to the question where you have $7,000 or $9,000 fix for 37 just to fix the crack, just to address the crack, nothing else, for however long that might last, or spend the $37,000, $40,000 and replace all of it that needs to be replaced anyway and get away from that situation. So meanwhile, the state comes along last fall-ish and says, well, we're concerned about this crack, DES, because of the environmental hazard. And we said, we are too, because we are looking at a well in that area, and we would like to see that risk, however remote it is, because there's been no leaks detected. I think Rick has taken on the responsibility of going down there. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but you go down there every day and inspects that sump to make sure that there's been no leaks. So we're watching it very closely. There's been no leaks that I'm aware of. Anyway, so we had this $37,000 target. We applied for a grant from the state for that $37,000. And don't hold me to this, but sometime around the holidays, we're denied that grant. We didn't get that particular grant. So DES pops up last week and says, well, you didn't get the grant, so what are we going to do about Plan B? You got to, I'm paraphrasing here. What are you going to do? We got to fix that now. You've had as much time. We're not going to wait anymore. and they're considering an administrative order to direct us to fix it. And I said, well, it's kind of like getting blood out of a stone at this point. And so they said, well, if you can't fix it within a period of time, because they had basically stood back, waiting to see if we were going to get the grant, because the grant would have fixed the whole problem. So now they're stepped forward again, and so now they're saying they're considering an administrative order, which is more likely than not, and a red tag, which means that they will red tag the fuel system, and we won't be able to take delivery of any new fuel, which will give us 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on the season, and then fuel, and then we won't be able to get any additional fuel delivered there. Which puts us in a bit of a quandary, because that's one of the sources of revenues that we might rely on to pay for the replacement of this fuel system. So we had this conversation last week about getting some updated proposals from the companies that we were talking to last fall, and we are told that the $37,000 quote now is out the window, and that all the parts have now become impossible to find, and that the cost is going to be double or triple. Basically, if you got the money, we'll find it for you, but if you don't have the money, forget it. So we're waiting for Rick and Heath are out getting the actual revised estimates. These are verbal kind of representations as well. Yeah, well, that was last year. This year it's going to cost you, double, triple, whatever. So we're waiting for the actual written quotes to arrive to see if that's really going to be the case. But there's little doubt that it's going to be sufficiently more. So we're in a bad place, because the cost of repairing this equipment, the payback is outrageous. Because, Paul, what did we make a year there and clear it? The net on
5 and 8,000.
The net on fuel sales is between 5 and 8,000. So if you're looking at let's just pick an $80,000 number, so it's easy to do the math. You're looking at a 10-year payback, and during that 10 years, you don't have the availability of that revenue to help pay for the other stuff that's going on at the airport. So I haven't figured out a plan to figure this out yet, but I'm not liking the cards we're being dealt.
Can, as part of the NIPIUS, being the NIPIUS program, can any of that be applied?
I asked about that today and got, no. There wasn't any readily available monies that they thought we could apply for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have heard, and Rick can probably remember the name because I can't, it's written down on my desk, there has been the surfacing of a second sealant that the vendors are saying, oh, well, you can't use that one because the state hasn't accepted. But they are accepting, just in the last few months, they are accepting this product. Now, when I was on the phone with the state's DES attorney, today's Monday, Thursday of last week, I said, well, what about this other product? And he said, what other product? I've never heard of it. And I said, well, our vendors are telling us that this is accepted by the state. And he says, raspberries, that's not true, but I'll check. So he's off checking to find out if that has, in fact, been approved, and he just hasn't heard about it.
And this guy's an attorney, not like the engineer or anything.
No, he's a DES attorney, so would he know firsthand? Maybe not. There may be something that's been approved that he maybe hasn't gotten a memo on yet, but he's off checking that. And so, I don't know, sometime this week I expect he and I will talk, and he'll tell me, yeah, you can use that, or no, you can't, and get ready, I'm sending you an AO, and we're gonna red tag that pump, or those tanks.
This crack is not a through-the-wall crack, it's basically just the surface, crack on the
No,
surface.
Rick, can you describe the crack a little bit more detail?
It's a very, very minor crack at the elbow joint that comes up from the pipe that goes into the underground, from the underground storage tank into the dispenser itself. It's a common place for these dispenser sumps to crack. It's a very, very fine crack. It required literally a fingernail running over the area to even discover exactly where it was. It was discovered on the basis that the dispenser sump failed a tightness test where they filled the dispenser up with water, and I think the state of New Hampshire, after it sits for 3 hours, it's not permitted to, I want to say it's only allowed to go down about 1/8 of an inch, which is absolutely ridiculous in the first place, but that's another story. They also did the test, what it was about, the ambient temperature was about 10 degrees, maybe a little less than that. So I had any number of questions about the timing of the original tightness test. They've done a subsequent tightness test. I think the long and short of it for me was I thought we could probably, if we had done the cracked seal recommended by ICON containment solutions in Salt Lake City, if we had done that and continued to monitor it, we might have gotten away with it if nothing else, bought some more time. But I think it's now gone beyond that. I don't know if it would be possible to revisit that and move forward on that basis. I don't know if that completely satisfies your question, but fire away, and I'll see if I can.
So we're waiting for the state to kind of say, yes, this sealant, the second sealant will be acceptable, which in that case, we probably don't have a choice financially. If it's a $7,000 or $8,000 fix, we probably have to do that. Versus if the quotes are re-quoted in the $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 range, we probably don't have any choice but to do the crack and figure out the replacement of the system at some other date and time.
Is that another ICON product?
What was the name of the original one that the state didn't like, Rick?
ICON.
Yeah, there's a different.
I think it's ICON. ICON Containment Solutions or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that the state said raspberries to, and another product has come forward that was it M&K or M&N or whatever it is. The one that is up in the Lakes region that was going to give us a quote for the replacement of the system.
MB Maintenance is one, yeah.
They made a recommendation to Heath that he look at this other product that they represented that had been accepted by the state in the last maybe several months or something as an alternative to the ICON. And the guy from DES said raspberries, he had never heard about it, and that's not going to work. But he was at least willing to go and check and see if there had been a decision that
He used the term raspberries?
No, I use that.
Oh.
I use something different.
Heard that?
He used the word.
Something like raspberries, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose at this point, given that fact, we're going to have to wait until he comes up with an answer to that question himself and go from there. Again, I monitor that. I monitor the sump, not quite daily, but I think I daily want to monitor like once a month or something like that. I monitor at the least once a week, and usually more often than not. There's been no leaking there. There's no weeping within the system. I mean, it's an old system, but it works and it works well. So I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't see why we can't go back and revisit the ICON solution, which they know works, and we all know it works. It's just the state of New Hampshire doesn't know it works. 49 of the states agree that it works, and New Hampshire's the only one that doesn't. So I don't know what else. I don't know what to say beyond that.
Order more fuel quickly.
Well, you can,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
You can, as long as it's in there before they put the red tag on, you're good. But that only lasts, depending on the time of year, we figured it out.
Well, at
It's
least you
like
got
4 to
something.
6 months before you run out.
If they red tag the system, I think they shut the entire system down. They won't let us turn the system on. Period.
Oh.
Irrespective of what we've got in our underground storage tank.
But see, the attorney actually made that recommendation.
Fill it?
Yeah.
He said, go ahead and fill it, you'll get at least, whatever you get out of it. And so I said, okay. So I don't know, they're talking about those things.
Have we contacted our representatives to see if they can help us?
Not yet. I'm kind of, this is since Thursday or Friday last week. I'm kind of waiting to see where the AG or the attorneys land on this, so I have something to fight, argue about. See if they're going to play with this or not play with this. But thus far, they have not been willing to accept the ICON product. Don't know about the new product, and seemed itching to pull the trigger on the AO and to shut us down. I said, well, I guess you can do that.
Yeah. So
Not
can
gonna
we
get
get
us
back to
closer
the budget?
goal. Sorry?
Can we get back to the budget?
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is because there's a $37,000 reference on the budget.
Yeah,
That is not
thank you.
being recommended because
Mhm.
I don't know how to pay for it, you know?
Okay.
They have little or no, I mean, they're
Yeah.
always flirting with the
And
zero
that's-
bottom line.
Not gonna be enough anyway.
So,
What is the likelihood that it'll get red tagged?
my guess, my gut tells me 90% or more.
Wow.
There's nothing to stop them from red tagging it right now. I mean, they could do it tomorrow morning.
Bert, you have a question?
Well, we pump fuel at all the gas stations in town and et cetera. What is the difference here that makes it so expensive? If we're talking an elbow that we can feel the crack in, is it it's above ground? You can't replace the elbow? There's something.
No, it's not in the elbow, Bert. It's immediately below the elbow where the elbow goes vertical into the dispenser. And typically when someone activates the nozzle, there's a little bit of a flex in that elbow, and that pump that consistently hits the dispenser floor, and over time they're known to crack that way. It's not exactly unusual, and that's why people like Icon have a solution to repair it. But as I said, the state of New Hampshire is the only state that says, no, we don't particularly like that solution. So the problem with Icon, it would be they'd have to spend about $15,000 or $20,000 of their own money to go through all the testing that the state of New Hampshire would want, when in fact testing has been done and it's been approved elsewhere. I can't remember the name of the testing companies, but they're noted and reputable testing companies, but the state of New Hampshire evidently doesn't recognize them. So that's where we are, guys.
So,
Okay.
but following up with Bert's question, this section of piping that has the crack, it's not accessible to replace?
It's not the piping, Jeff. It's below the piping. It's in the thermoplastic dispenser sump.
Okay.
It's part of the pump, the sump itself.
It's like a tub. It's a tub that sits below the dispenser unit. It goes down about 2.5 or 3 feet, and it's about as wide as the entire dispenser unit on the top. So you can walk out to it at any time and take a look at it and get a rough idea of the dimensions, or I'll be happy to show you what it looks like anytime.
And part of the complication is to get to that point, that location, you gotta take all the junk that's on top of it off. You gotta like basically disassemble the fuel system to get to that point.
And that's been done about 3 or 4 times in the last year, which didn't do our costs much good. But yeah, it's not an impossible task.
Still, a question. You got below-ground tanks pumping gasoline and diesel everywhere, and they repair them and put them back online. So we've got something that's different. Are we? Is there a requirement between the ground and the plane that is aviation required that makes this undoable? But to go in there, if you've got a building on top of it, you remove the building, you go down in, you pull the pipe up from the sump, and you replace it with a new one. Doesn't sound like it's...
I think the only way I can answer that question, Bert, is for every type of fuel, they've got to test each type of fuel individually, whether it's the fuel that we put in automobiles, different octanes, the diesel fuel, and aviation fuel. 100 low lead is a different kind of fuel. Its spec is different. Jet fuel would be another different kind of fuel. And I think they've all got to be tested. The sense I get is they've all got to be tested independently and basically rubber stamped on each type of fuel. Now again, Icon's uses this patch that they've got, there's actually a patch and an over patch that they put on it. It's a kind of a flat, kind of an epoxy, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it would go right over that crack. And then there's another part to the patch that goes above that. And as I said, that's been approved everywhere except in the state of New Hampshire. And if we could just get them to do that and go along with a monitoring system, I think we'd be in the ballpark. But I don't know if they're going to buy into that anymore.
Anything else in your budget that we need to be aware of?
I still, one more moment. I don't understand, you got a tank underground and you got a pump out of the tank. That is not rocket science.
Right.
You gotta seal, you gotta seal everything. It's gotta meet the pressure test. All of the gas stations, whether they get diesel or not, all of the tanks, all of the lines have to be tested to hold. And if they don't hold, they gotta be repaired. So I'm missing that we're coming to the edge of this cliff over replacing what it takes to get the fuel from down there into the hose.
I'm as curious as you are.
And I haven't heard, I've not heard an explanation of why you cannot do that. You can remove the building, you can go down, you can remove all of the plumbing from down below and replace it.
So the agency that issues us the permit to do that and monitors and supervises and inspects those systems only allows certain approaches to making those repairs. And in this case, they're not allowing us to use the ICON system statewide. And that's the only system that's available at the moment that we're aware of, with the exception of this new one that's popped up in the last week.
Yeah. So is
The
this
state has to approve it, or we can't do it.
the icon is a seal,
Yes.
as opposed to a replacement of what you need to get from here to there.
Well,
But it's
the crack is in the sump, so you have to replace the whole sump or replace or seal the crack. It's not in the pipe leading to the sump, it's in the sump itself.
basically the bathtub underneath.
Yeah.
Is correct.
Right, but you can have a pump to pull up out.
What?
Isn't that what happens with all of the gas tanks? Aviation fuel everywhere. So to replace the sump,
Everything has to come out above it, and that's where the cost gets up there. It's,
That's the 37,000.
which may now be a lot more.
Or at least that's what the guy spouted off. When we called him and said, look, we need your updated thing, he said, oh yeah, well, I'm making this up because it was related to me. He said, I'll give you one, but be ready because it's gone up by factors of 2 and 3 nationwide. So he said, what do you mean 2 or 3? You mean like 70, 80, 100,000? And he goes, yeah, just be ready. When I get you the estimate, that's the range where it's going to be.
Any insurance that covers this?
No, it's a wear and tear maintenance kind of.
Okay.
Wear and tear, things have
Age.
so much life.
so where do you get your fuel if you don't put it in your tank and pump it out of your tank?
11, Claremont.
Concord.
So everybody's got to get their fuel from other places. Boy, I have a hard time with this, the tank that's in the ground,
I understand.
and all that comes out of it is, I'm gonna use the term normal stuff. Even if it's aviation, it's normal for aviation.
Yeah.
100%. I agree with you. I'm just as puzzled and curious about it as you are.
We're selling about 15,000 gallons a year,
22.
22.
Closer to 20,000.
All right, so
How many years have the tanks been in the ground?
How many, excuse me?
Are the tanks in the ground itself with ground contact, or are they in a,
There's one double-walled tank in the ground, a 10,000 gallon USD underground storage tank.
Installed in '96.
It was installed in 1995. It's an older tank, but so far its performance has been fine. We have a Vita root on it. We have a leak detection system on the tank. That's fine. Again, it's not even the pump. It's not plumbing to the pump. It's a crack in a thermoplastic tub that sits below the dispenser unit. That's where the problem is. And it's an easy patch fix that is approved everywhere but in the state of New Hampshire.
We're not gonna solve
A
this
simple
problem tonight.
But be aware, now that you brought up that topic,
Yeah,
that storage tank itself is getting up there.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So 22,000, that's at 30 cents a gallon profit, that's 6,600 this year, or last year, right?
5 to 6 is what we typically get, I guess.
Does that get put into revenues, Paul, on the page 31? Or
Yes.
where does that go in there? So I don't see that in that list.
You'll see gas sales, which should be the top line of
page.
charges for service,
Next page, airport.
page 61, line 10.
I was looking at it. I went back and was looking at the revenues.
No, it's like an enterprise fund, it's all contained.
So because it's an enterprise fund, at $5,000 or $6,000 a year, it's pretty hard to amortize a lot of money real fast.
But it goes back to, if you don't get your fuel there, you have to go somewhere else.
Right.
You want these people to get fuel from here to keep them here. And for you voted to go to the higher standard for the airport. But now you've got to go somewhere else to get gas.
Yeah, the NIPIAS, participation in the NIPIAS program is unrelated to this particular matter, but there is a inconvenience factor, and not being able to get gas at your local airport, I guess, but there's lots of small airports that don't have fuel, but, for the.
Actually, Bert's brought up a good point, and that is that we've been exceedingly competitive on our fuel pricing, and we're known for that, and we work really diligently at it. And we have a lot of transient traffic. About 40% of our traffic is transient traffic. They stop at Parlin Field, they come into the town of Newport, they come into the area because they know that they've got great fuel prices at Parlin Field, and they get just about any other kind of help that they need every time they come there. We've got a reputation to uphold. Fuel is part of that equation, and it's an important part of that equation.
So I don't take exception to any of that. That's all true, and all true in spades, but it doesn't change the equation. It's an enterprise fund, and where am I gonna get $100,000, or even $80,000, or $75,000 to fix this problem? I don't.
So we're just gonna, as Jeff said, we're not gonna solve it here tonight,
No.
but
No.
you're waiting to hear from that
Yeah,
guy.
if the state blinks, then we've got a solution.
Yeah.
But they haven't indicated
Okay.
that they're willing.
I still think you should get in touch with our legislators.
Well, once they say, no,
Yeah.
we're not gonna play, then I'll do that.
Get the governor
What did
involved.
we pay in '96?
For the tank?
Yeah,
That's Paul.
excuse me.
Paul, you remember what the tank cost?
No, I'm asking a question. And then,
But Paul's gonna answer it.
Well, I think as Hunter said, it's getting to be an older tank. I don't know what the life of the tanks are, and at some point, the state may say, we don't like the age of your tank, so maybe under the NIPIAS program, we may be able to get assistance to replace the tank.
My call today seemed to not fall on insensitive ears or unsympathetic ears, but no, we can't think of anything. Talk to the contractor you're just about to hire for the master plan. They might know of some grants that are around, but the state aeronautical did not know of any quick fixes to this. The grant last fall was the.
Right, but it may not be a quick fix, but it may take a couple years as the NIPIAS takes a while to,
Yep.
work through. The whole.
It could be.
The whole repaving of the runway, you had a quote for it. We got the money from
Right.
from the earmark, and then all of a sudden the FAA stepped in and wait a minute,
We're not gonna give it to you.
you got to go through all these bells and hoops, and after 3 or 4 years,
Right.
it's going to be a $2 million job.
Yeah. So there is a prospect there for, in the next round of infrastructure funding, that we could apply for, and which has just been announced today, as a matter of fact, that we could, and I don't want anybody to get their hopes up on this, but we could put in a request for an earmark for a transportation-related earmark and find that solution there. But that's a year,
Right.
year or two out.
Which, it may be, if we get red flagged or whatever you called it, we may have to go without doing fuel until we can take care of the problem.
Right. So my guess is that it's probably gonna get more complicated and worse before it gets better. Just because of the bureaucracy and the time that's involved, I don't know.
And even with an earmark, then the FAA steps in again, it's like, okay, well, here's all the extra hoops you're gonna have to go, you know.
Maybe.
I gotta get one dig in here.
Only one?
We had last year, we had the Chandler's Mills Bridge in there for what, $400,000 was it? And I asked about that, and now we're down to 25,000. We need to apply that kind of effort to the airport here to keep it so that they can get their fuel here. Get another bidder, get somebody else that puts those installations in and say, how can we do this? It's simple. You got a tank underground, we gotta get it from there into this airplane. That's not rocket science.
But it is rocket fuel.
No, it's not rocket fuel.
And actually, the 25,000 is just our share of the Chandler's Mills Bridge.
Excuse me?
The 25,000 is just our share. There's still the state share, so. So,
Yeah.
Can I ask another question on airport budget?
sure.
Line 13, is that the big bump this year, the $23,000 bump? Is that the door, the hangar door? Is that what's driving that cost up, line 13? Last year, it was about 6,000 over.
Yeah,
This
it
year, it's
dropped down.
23,000.
Right, that's correct.
Which line?
13.
Right.
That's because
On
of
what
the-
page, Jim?
The roof.
59.
Door, that's the roof,
That's
yeah.
the roof.
Yeah.
That's the roof.
The hangar door was put on by the volunteers at the airport, and we sold T-shirts and begged Bart and stole everything we could get to put the door on about 12 years ago.
It may have been, but it shows up here as 23,000 over budget.
That's not the door, that's the roof.
Okay.
And actually, there was a earmark for that, I believe.
Not
The-
not for the roof. Well, there was, yes, that's correct. That came from the CARES. Is it CARES?
Correct.
The
Yeah.
CARES or-
There were
CARES
grants that offset the
Right.
cost, but were not for it.
Yeah.
So we're good with the 6,000 going forward?
Yeah, that seems to be more than normal.
That just kind of jumped out, I wanted to clarify. Thank you. Thank you.
What is shape of the roof? We had some issues when that got put on because
So
of the
because the building is not square and not plumb and not flat, the firm that we hired to put on the roof put on a corrugated metal roof and very quickly figured out that the roof was not square, plumb, or flat. I think they knew it wasn't flat also before they got there.
I should hope so.
Yeah, but they found that the corrugated, the valleys and the peaks, as they went over the roof, did not align well with one another because the roof was doing this as it went over, because the building is not square. So they had trouble getting the valleys and the ridges to seal well. They put a lot of sealant into it and still weren't able to get it to do that. So they are at their expense coming in and putting in a second roof. And the seams on that roof will fully overlap the seams from the now new roof, but they're going to overlap it so the seams are buried under the new roof. And they're going to do that in the spring at their expense.
What's that gonna do for the weight load up there?
I am told that it is not a concern. So
Okay.
It's fine. So I feel quite fortunate that the company has stepped forward and said, we said we could do that, it didn't work out, we're gonna make good on our
Right, and
promises.
the company's done other work in town and their
Yes.
reputation to uphold.
But still, it's rather exceptional that they were stepping up and committed to their craft.
Anything else on airport?
Good.
Everyone good? Herb,
We're good.
you're the airport rep, aren't you?
I am.
Okay,
I've heard all this several times, yes.
okay. All right, thank you, Rick. Well,
Thank you. Good night.
Hopefully we
Thanks,
get a
Rick.
resolution on this leak issue,
I hope
or
so.
potential leak issue. All right. Anything else for tonight, Paul? So we feel we do need to come back a week from Thursday.
on budget.
I do have a question. Have you changed the line for the Conservation Commission to include the money?
Not yet, no. I have it in my notes, but when
You're
we
gonna-
go
you're gonna
go
do
through and do the selectmen's budget, we'll
Yeah.
be in there.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
when he puts in,
And I guess at some point, since fuel has been a question, we may want to come up with a decision as to how we want to address the budgeted amount for fuel, whether we feel it should be reflected differently or not.
I'd like to see it done closer to the 5-year average.
Thought this was
But-
5-year.
There are a number of examples we picked out from other
All right.
departments that were way off,
Okay.
but not have that affect the bottom line. So it seems like we never go over budget, but yet we always overspend in fuel, which means the money is there other places. We just need to budget for it accurately.
Say one area we're seeing money going along is with the positions that are budgeted but have not been filled. You know, bit of savings, you know, it's hard to fill the buildings and ground position and others as a.
This is, I mean, historically speaking, we've requested appropriate amounts of fuel, right, those line items, but yet they're only funded at, you know, a percentage of it. We're always under budgeting fuel, knowing that we're actually gonna spend the average.
I think last year, one problem was we underestimated where we thought the cost of fuel would go. I think we budgeted at $2.50 or something.
Yeah.
This is not just a last year thing, though. This is something that historically,
I think what you're referring, at one point, we rebid out our fuel services and saved substantial, I mean, it was seriously meaningful, like, I don't know, 20%, Paul, or something.
So a simple solution is we take a look at the 5-year averages in each one of these and
Plug those in, that's great.
and then, but that shouldn't have to necessarily come out of the budget support that amount of money, either way.
yeah, see, my thought is the money's
So it
already
comes-
there,
we-
but we gotta get closer to an actual budget.
But if you budget it, then you're gonna, and you want it to stay, not affect the bottom line, then we gotta take it out of somewhere else.
Correct.
Right. You're gonna have to
You
wing
get-
it.
Yeah, but you,
Yeah.
I get your point, and then, you know, my point is that budgets are averages, they're,
But we're not averaging.
well, in that particular line, but if, once you start chasing that thread,
Within that whole budget.
then you get, then it's, but it works, I mean, if you wanna do that, we're happy to have the extra money, because that will likely mean that we'll have more leftover money at the end of the year. Because I won't have stolen it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what do we want to see a week from Thursday? We have warrant articles ready by then?
Warrant articles are pretty well known to us. What we can do is, at some point, what we'd like to produce is an updated budget with any changes you're going to make, the change that you requested. I've got to go in and find the extra truck driver position, so I got to go out, I'm going to go in and cut
Yeah.
basically another 75 grand out of the budget.
Okay.
And then you'll make whatever changes you want to make to the fuel, if you want to do that. So the budget will change quite a bit, and then we'll give you a final, a reprint of everything that we've changed for you, and then you can vote on whether or not you want to adopt it or not.
Good.
All right. Anything else? Anyone want to make a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hunter?
I can say it. I just wanted to, I don't know if you caught it in your board notes, but we are going to be approaching the police and public works unions in the next week or 10 days to negotiate new salary adjustments. And we have to have that sorted out and finished with them by the 14th of March to meet the statutory requirements.
Yeah, good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Next meeting is next Thursday?
Budget
23rd.
meeting. We have a regular meeting next Monday.
Monday.
And are you intent on